I really do. I really do. I call to order our March 2nd school board meeting here. Get in it. All righty. Seeing a quorum of voting members, I call to order our Cincinnati School Board meeting for March 2nd, 2026. Superintendent Murphy, will you please introduce our students for the Pledge of Allegiance and have everyone stand?
My pleasure. Today we have the students from Walnut Hills High School, where Mr. John Chambers is the principal.
Walnut Hills Eagles, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I tell you, high school students do it quick, right? Let's get this over with. Treasurer Guston, please call the attendance roll.
Ms. Armbruster.
Here.
Ms. Bolton.
Present.
Mr. Crossett. Here. Mr. Lindy.
Here.
Ms. Mapp.
Here.
Vice President Moffitt.
Here.
President Craig.
Here. Before we continue with our normal business, I want to take a little personal privilege to say the district lost another shining light last week. You know, we know the loss of any child is tragic in our community. We ask our community to keep the family in their thoughts and prayers. At this time, although we won't specifically reference the students, we do ask that we have a brief moment of silence for the lost child. Thank you for that. I will now turn it over to Vice President Moffitt to explain the virtual hearing of the public process.
Members of the public who are online and wish to speak during our hearing of the public this evening may do so by clicking that chat button right now. The chat feature will be open for your request for 5 minutes. If you'd like a direct response to your questions, please make sure to share your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. I need a motion and a second to approve the March 2nd business meeting agenda.
A motion.
Second.
Chair Gus.
Ms. Armbruster.
Yes.
Ms. Bolton.
Yes.
Mr. Crossett. Yes. Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Ms. Mapp.
Yes.
Vice President Moffitt.
Yes.
President Craig.
Yes. So tonight's agenda is approved as posted. To our next item of business here, do any board members have any acknowledgements or announcements? Board Member Armbruster.
Yes, I had so many amazing events last week. And so I wanted to first acknowledge our superintendent. I had the pleasure of attending the Chamber's annual dinner last week where Superintendent Murphy was honored as a We Are Making Black History honoree. It's a very prestigious award, and we are lucky to have her leadership and her change-making attitude here in our district. And I just wanted to say congratulations. Dr. Moffitt and I also had the pleasure of attending the Rothenberg Spelling Bee, which was amazing and really inspiring to see all of their students get up there and be brave in front of an enormous crowd of people and spell words that I would struggle with. So they even had a second grade student make it to, I think, their top 5, and just really, really impressive to see that community come together to rally around the students. And yeah, I continue on my tour of amazing schools here in CPS, and I shout out to all of them that have been very kind in hosting me.
I think it's a rare occasion that we get the superintendent shocked on something that comes on the screen here, and so I appreciate that feeling there. Are there other board members who have announcements? Board Member Lindy.
Thank you, President Craig. I can be brief, but I wanted to thank Interim Principal Yates at Pleasant Hill for letting me walk around the school with him on Friday. Really learned a lot, really appreciate his hard work and the hard work of the teachers in that building, all the staff in that building. And I just want to say thank you, and I really enjoyed my visit.
Other board members? No? Oh, Vice President Moffitt.
I'm going to have my pictures next week. I didn't send them to Rob, so it's my fault. But I do want to mention that the CPS International Jazz Fest was this past Saturday? Today's Monday, Saturday. And all of our students did amazing. We had an introduction by President Craig. It was awesome. And it's a great date night. If you missed it this year, you will definitely be beneficial to catch it next year. Also want to say that I attended, along with President Craig and the superintendent, a recognition ceremony at the University of Cincinnati for our Marion Spencer Scholars. I'll have my pictures next week, and I forgot to send them. I didn't know if anybody else was going to do that, but I typically take pictures, so we'll have our acknowledgement of our Marion Spencer Scholars. South Avondale had a great parent engagement panel discussion in conjunction in our partnership with Hamilton County Juvenile Court, and it was just very engaging. We had vendors come out. Thank you to that entire team. And lastly, Crayons and Beyond, which was formerly Crayons to Computers, had a really great reception. I attended with President Craig and our Deputy Superintendent, and they have announced a great initiative where they are bringing supplies to teachers. Woohoo! So you'll have to hear more about that. And they've got a wonderful partnership with Sam Hubbard and Hubbard's Cupboard. And it's aggressive, it's assertive, and it's exactly what our teachers need to support our students. So I'll have pictures next week, but I wanted to make sure that I said thank you to all of our teams and our staff that have made that happen. Great job.
All right, and then Board Member Armbruster had another.
Yeah, sorry, I did forget. I had so much CPS love this past week. It's hard to remember everything, but I didn't make it to these other amazing events on Saturday because my gym was hosting the Cincinnati Premier Youth Basketball League tournament, and I am very proud to say that every CPS team that played in our 10 games that we hosted won and beat out our suburban colleagues. So I was very proud to see CPS performing, and the future of CPS basketball is very bright.
Board Member Matt.
Yes, I would like to give a kudos to Assistant Superintendent Badgett for making sure that he coordinated with several of our schools, our middle schools, Pleasant Hill, as well as Evanston and Woodward, for those students to be able to attend Central State University for their professional educator preparation summit. That was a mouthful, but I just really appreciate you for making sure that the students had an opportunity to experience what it was like to be on a college campus with a focus around education. I know that the students thoroughly enjoyed their time there, that they learned a lot, and was really grateful to experience the cafeteria. So thank you, Mr. Badgett, for helping to facilitate that for our students.
All righty. Board Member Crossan.
Last thing, I wanted to thank Amy Thompson of the Cincinnati Youth Collaborative for organizing the Mentoring Summit last week. I got a chance to attend part of that. It was a very well-attended event, lots of good energy, and a lot of interest from a lot of our partners around the city.
Awesome. I'll do just 3 really quick ones, and I'll turn it over to our treasurer and superintendent for any announcements and kudos they might have, as well as any retirement announcements. But first, I want to highlight, Dr. Moffitt already mentioned that we went to the Spencer Scholars induction ceremony. It was a great event with wonderful speaker Greg Landsman, as well as Vice President of Ethics, Compliance, and Community Impact. I should know this because she's my boss. Bluezette Marshall. That really welcomed the students into the process this year. It was a great event. I want to specifically highlight, though, one of the original Marion Spencer Scholars, who's one of the original graduates of the Spencer School, who is now working, because he finished early in his programs at UC and still has time on his Spencer scholarship, He's now going to be working in our with our audit team. And so Maxwell Lawson, tremendous young man, but he was also kind of kicked off the Spencer induction ceremony as well, and was kind of leading the group of the original scholars there who were there to celebrate. So, but it's a story of CPS to me that is just so tremendous. And even learning, about him going through that process and about him finishing up, because he started basically as a sophomore in college because of the work he did at Spencer, and having almost 90 credits to start his school time with, that's tremendous. So I want to give a big shout out to Maxwell and welcoming him to the district to spend some time here with our audit team. I also want to highlight another thing that Board Member Armbruster and I did on Thursday, and we'll be doing it again this coming up month, is the Widening the Lens program that Taft offered with some of their students. It was a great chance to meet and talk with some of the students and hear about the things that are important to them, but also see the passion that are in some of these students that we don't often get to talk to and see and recognize and form connections with some of these students who shared a lot of great stories. But it was a fun event with a lot of great leaders in the community that were all there to listen to the students and to learn from the students as well. And then I would be remiss if I did not highlight the fact that we're at the beginning stages of a great relationship with Kid Future CPS that I saw a lot of community support for. A lot of community members came out right before the Jazz Fest event. Board Member Crossett was there as well. But it's a tremendous opportunity for us to start to really think about what are the things that will make the student experiences better, and how do we invest in those things? And so Superintendent Murphy was there as well, and several other community partners that have been there along the way. They're looking to keep working with us. So those are my highlights there. I'll turn it over to the superintendent and to Treasurer Gustin for any. Oh, sorry, Board Member Crossett.
On that Widening the Lens program, it's a really cool program, and hopefully we can expand it, but I did want to give a shout out to Alyssa Yancey, who has invented that. So,
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
President Craig, everyone, I have a couple of retirees that I want to share with everyone. One, certificated personnel, long-term substitute teacher, Ms. Brenda D. McGee. We appreciate all of her service. And then we have a few civil service employees, including Ms. Carmen Bobo, a custodian 1 in our facilities department, Mr. Manny Everidge, a custodian 1 at Roselawn Condon School. And then we have Patrick Everidge, custodian 1 at North Avondale Montessori School. And then also Bobby Lynn, who is a security assistant 2 at James N. Gamble Montessori Elementary. And finally, Ms. Diane Muscarella, a paraprofessional at Carson School. Congratulations to our retirees. And I do have a couple of more kudos, all the things that were previously said. It was a very busy weekend. The kids love seeing the board members come out too, so I am truly appreciative of them. But I do want to talk about a couple of more things that happened, and that is the Excellence in Awards recognition from Cincinnatus. And we have several people who are being awarded, starting with Principal Kevin Williams from Silverton Elementary. He's receiving the James N. Jacobs Memorial Award of Excellence for Outstanding Administration in Cincinnati Public Schools. We also have Mr. Mark Hogan. This is interesting if you don't know Mr. Hogan. Kilgore Elementary School volunteer. He's receiving the John E. Pepper Education Community Service Award. He is a magician, and he's interested in spreading his talent to other Cincinnati public school houses. So we'll be back in touch with Mr. Hogan. And then finally, Ms. Briah Johnson from Woodward Career Technical High School. She is the Woodward Trust Distinguished Teacher Educator winner. So this is for exceptional efforts and contributions of a teacher in Cincinnati Public Schools. So congratulations to all of the Cincinnatus awardees. And then I also want to tell you, I think this was last Tuesday, I'm getting my days mixed up, but the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Cincinnati every year honor and celebrate the Greater Cincinnati Youth of the Year. And so I had an invitation to come to their final competition. There were 6 young people from across the city, and the winner of this competition received $20,000. They had to give a speech about their experience in Boys and Girls Club, their experiences in other extracurricular programs, and what their future holds for them. And guess what? The winner, 20 grand, came from Western Hills High School, Miss Honesty James.
Alrighty. Go back to my script so I don't mess up today. Turn it over to Dr. Moffitt for our hearing of the public.
Thank you, President Craig. We are now at the item on our agenda for the hearing of the public. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and will address all comments to the presiding officer. If you have any materials or presentations wanting to be distributed to the board members, please give them to the board administrative assistant, Ms. Phyllis Davis, in the first row. If you are online, once a request to speak has been granted, you will be invited to enter. You should click on the camera icon to go interactive. Provide your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you'd like a response to any questions that you may have. This request is consistent with board protocol, and we appreciate your help. In the unusual event that someone is not willing to follow this protocol, we do reserve the right to end that person's time. Again, each person will have 2 minutes to speak. When the timer goes off, your time is up, and please refrain from discussing any personnel items. After speaking, if you are online, you'll briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back to the live stream meeting. Finally, we ask that your public commentary be respectful to all listeners and board members. Rob, do we have anyone? Online?
Madam Vice Chair, we do not.
No? Okay. So then I will call down, we'll start with our 4 speakers. They will be Brad Smith, Michelle Dunn, Karen Imbus, and Julie Sellers.
Good evening, Board of Education. My name is Brad Smith. I'm a CFT field representative. I am a constituent, and I am a taxpayer. I wanted to address the board policy regarding requiring standardized test scores on student report cards. During my second year teaching at Rockdale, I taught middle school. I was asked to find 40 students to focus on to pass the test. The cut score was 400, and so when I got to student 20, I was pulling students who scored below 350. That year, my passage rate went from 8 to 11%. In looking at the scores, I saw that each student increased at least 20 points, most 40 to 50. If a student scored at the 320 the year before and grew 50 points, they're still not on grade level. My question to the board is, was I supposed to fail that child? Does a child who grew 50 points and is not on grade level not deserve an A or B? I always quoted Song Mei Ling in my classroom, who said, "We write our own destiny, we become what we do." I didn't assign grades, my students earned them. Just because a child is not on grade level doesn't mean the grades they earned aren't valid. What this policy does is question teachers with students below grade level and suggest somehow that the grade is inflated regardless of the progress the student makes. So why not just replace grades with a single test score? 48 multiple choice questions once a year is not a reliable measure. Standardized tests are not the end-all be-all, they're just one data point in many. They don't capture the amazing things that happen in our classrooms across this district. It's just another policy to malign teachers and blame them for society's failures. It's another step in the privatizer's playbook from people like Ben Kleben and Dr. Janice Silver to close public schools and hand them over to for-profit entities. Ask the families of Doane how that worked out. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Dunn, just say your name when you all get up.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Dunn. Last week, CFT provided testimony raising concerns about the policy committee inviting school board partners to consult with you. Later in the evening, 3 of you defended the group and minimized our concerns, and we understand how the true agenda of some education consultants can be difficult to discern. They present themselves as neutral, but what cannot be hidden are the results of their interference in school districts across the country. It was stated School Board Partners is agnostic about charter expansion. That is just false. Their origin story is actually rooted in promoting the portfolio model, a market-driven strategy that treats schools like stocks to be closed, replaced, or turned over to charter operators based largely on test scores. Their billionaire funders, well-known advocates of privatization, are not hiding this agenda. You can just read a Bill Gates memo, and it says it right there, what they're about. If you are a member of School Board Partners and do not understand that this is their mission and their funding model, now you do know. Being affiliated with this organization as an elected official means either you are unaware of their purpose or you are complicit in advancing it. I spoke with public education advocates in Denver today, including a policy analyst, Mark McGuire, about what happened when School Board Partners and Ben Klaben came to their board. The founder of a parent group also told me this afternoon, quote, "No one should use Denver Public as a template for anything after what Ben Klaben and School Board Partners did to their district." Protect our public schools, protect our students. We respectfully ask that you remove yourself from School Board Partners. There are plenty of other resources that support school board members that don't have these dangerous strings attached. Thank you.
Good evening, President Craig and members of the board. My name is Karen Imbus. I'm a CFT field representative, a taxpayer, and the grateful parent of 3 adult daughters who were shaped by an excellent CPS education. I want to speak about the board's consideration of a model policy for the General Counsel's evaluation. At the last board meeting, board members stated that the board has put out multiple calls for model policies. To whom and how were those calls made? What was the process? The only policy I've heard discussed was from an organization called School Board Partners. This is troubling because School Board Partners is not what it seems to be. We've seen through its activities in other states that its true agenda is to promote educational privateering and charter school expansion to the detriment of public education. Before calling School Board Partners, did anyone at least make a call to the Ohio School Board Association, of which CPS is a member? Its mission is to serve Ohio's public school board members and the diverse districts that they represent, not the interests of billionaire reformers. Fundamentally, I am concerned about the policy committee's it's increasingly being used to exert an outsized influence over the work of the board. I hope the board will consider whether this model policy is just an expensive solution in search of a problem. My fear is that it's even more dangerous than that. I fear that it is a Trojan horse to usher in and normalize the interference of an outside right-wing organization that promotes policies that destroy public schools. Thank you.
First, I would like to say that I saw in the report of the treasurer that Accelerate Great Schools is going to fund the Montessori Educator Preparation Program, and I think that is fabulous that they are stepping up in this capacity for our district. The district and CFT, we've shared an interest to ensure that every teacher in CPS Montessori schools have the Montessori credentials, and due to funding cuts over the last few years, we were unable to make sure that every teacher have full credentials. So this is going to be very beneficial for those schools. But I also want to speak on having an outside portfolio model. We, the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers, have recently raised concerns regarding the introduction of outside consultants affiliated with an organization called School Board Partners into our local policy discussions. When we first heard about this, we started like saying, what are they all about? And everything just kept popping up, more and more and more research became available. CFT first became aware of the school board partners when 2 consultants connected to the organization were invited to participate in the February 13th, 2026 Cincinnati Public Schools Policy Committee meeting that was chaired by Ben Lindy, and they were invited, I believe, by the chair of the committee. A review of the professional backgrounds of these individuals shows that both have worked within charter-focused reform networks. One of the consultants was named in a recent lawsuit in Denver, Colorado, related to school closures and charter expansion within that district. The lawsuit alleges that consultant Ben Kleben engineers public school closures in order to facilitate private market profiteering from public monies, and asserts that he and district leadership focused on closing public schools while ignoring key rules governing district decision-making. These allegations reflect concerns raised by community members in Denver about how school closures were handled and how charter expansion followed those decisions. Denver Public Schools has often been cited as a leading example of the portfolio model, a governance approach that promotes closing district-run schools, expanding charter schools, and operating schools throughout performance-based contracts. Similar patterns have been documented in other cities such as New Orleans and Indianapolis, and there's a whole list of other cities where large-scale charter expansion followed school restructuring efforts. The consultants brought into our district have both operated within those so-called reform environments. Our main concern is not based solely on individual resumes, but rather on the broader national agenda that the school board partners represent. School board partners were founded in 2018 to train and coach school board members in advancing the portfolio model. The portfolio model treats schools like investments in the financial portfolio, where boards divest from schools deemed low performing and invest in schools considered high performing. The framework emphasizes standardized testing as the primary measure of accountability, school closures as a corrective mechanism, charter expansion, and autonomous governance structures that operate with reduced direct oversight from elected boards. This model is supported by major philanthropic funders who publicly advocate for school choice and charter expansion, including foundations such as the Gates Foundation, the Walton Family Foundation, the Dell Foundation, and other large education reform funders. It is also supported by national organizations such as Chiefs for Change, which trains leaders around accountability and test-based reforms, the Broad Superintendent's Academy, which trains leaders in market-oriented governance models. Both form part of a broader network that reinforces privatization of public education. Locally connected to this ecosystem is an organization called Accelerate Great Schools. AGS was modeled after reform organizations like Mind Trust in Indianapolis, which was part of the early CEE Trust, which is Cities for Education Entrepreneurship Trust Network, which was a precursor to the Education City, from which school board partners later emerged. The leadership overlap between local actors and reform networks raises serious concerns about whether our local school boards are aligned with national portfolio-based strategies. Board members who invited the consultants is married. One of the board members who invited the consultants is married to Accelerate Great Schools Chief of Staff and Operations, who's been responsible for directing the organization's strategic work since 2017. CFTs has raised these concerns publicly and spoke at the February 23rd, 2026 board meeting. The union objected to the district seeking advice from consultants regarding model board policies, given the volume of evidence that these consultants represent within this organization whose agenda and philosophy are to undermine public schools. The school board partners promote a strategy that can be summarized as test, rely on high-stakes standardized testing as the primary measure of performance, or possibly iReady, rank, label schools as failing or underperforming based on heavily on test results, or what percentage of teachers are using the curriculum exactly as intended, punish schools deemed low performing, open charters and autonomous school options in place of closed public schools. Now, we have not been doing that within our district, but once these people get in here, that is what their goal will be. Critically, this approach shifts governance away from democratically accountable neighborhood public schools towards systems influenced by philanthropic funding, market competition, and private operators. The results in many districts has included increased instability from school closures, disruptions to communities, greater racial and economic segregation, and narrowing of curriculum to focus primarily on standardized testing and outcomes. The introduction of consultants trained in this model, combined with the recent efforts to incorporate standardized test scores into our district report cards, is a red flag. Public education should remain grounded in the democratic governance, transparency, and community accountability. We strongly urge the board to rely on trusted policy resources with our district that our district already maintains formal memberships, including the Ohio School Board Association, rather than an outsourcing policy development to organizations promoting a national privatization framework. Our schools belong to our community. They're not your schools. Decisions about their future should reflect local priorities, public input, and transparent governance, not externally promoted reform models. I do have references for all of this. And the one article is Billionaires Expose the Impact of the Portfolio Model on Denver Public Schools, and it's through the Network for Public Education. And we may be inviting Mr. DeGuire to come to Cincinnati to talk about this in a public forum. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that is the conclusion of public comment. Passing it back to you, President Craig.
All righty. Let's hope all of our presentations today move very smoothly. And so we're going to kick off our presentations with Superintendent Murphy introducing our first presentation.
Absolutely. And then, of course, President Craig, I invite you to, yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay. So excited because last Friday, President Craig, myself, Mr. Burkhart and Treasurer Guston had our first conversation with both Bellwether and Rice Educational Consulting. And I wanted to just share with you, this is their deck that they utilized with us. And so I just thought I'd be transparent and share with you. On the next slide, you'll see the agenda for the meeting. It was a very productive, warm meeting. Bellwether and Rice were very open to commentary, suggestions that we had in this opening presentation that they completed with us. So on the next slide, you'll see what the warm-up question they presented to us. They were very instrumental, very interested in understanding what success would look, feel, and sound like for us. And so each of us had the opportunity to share that in addition to what would make it less successful for us. So on the next slide, they are proposing a particular timeline, and you can see starting rather immediately this month in March, but there are some gold stars that they list along the way, including a potential very public kickoff, a few working sessions for internal stakeholders, and then a final working session at the conclusion of the process. They put this in 3 phases to help make it easy to understand in terms of phase 1, understanding the CPS landscape, phase 2, talking about strategy, and then phase 3, what our plan for implementation will be. On the next slide, they talked about the differentiation of responsibilities between Bellwether and Rice. And some of it, they'll be working very jointly. Some of it, they each will take primary responsibility in the work as you see listed. You see the indication of who's leading the particular type of work and who will be a collaborator in the work. On the next slide, these are ideas that we talked about in terms of various committees to be able to complete this work, including the project leads, myself, Treasurer Gustin, and others, a steering committee, the work of the board, how the board will be able to give their input, their thoughts, their ideas, their no, not right now thoughts, an advisory committee, and then various working groups around our strategic planning. On the next page, we were asked to identify some key stakeholders, and remember, this list here is what they initially presented, so this has not been edited for any of the suggestions, additional suggestions that we made. And again, they were extremely open to the suggestions that we made. And then the final talked about what our next steps were, and that included scheduling some meetings, being clear about the standing committee, and the beginning process for data that they're going to be seeking from us.
So I will add quickly, and then I will open up for questions and comments. But I'll add 3 quick thoughts onto our conversation. So one, and if Rob, you go back to the slide with the, there, yeah, perfect. Reading my brain today, great. One of the things that we talked about within that is the steering committee being the folks within the district who can help lead them as they gain information, as they're going through and looking at programs and projects, getting access to schools. This is a lot of the work that also both Bellwether and Rice would be utilizing. So Rice doing a little bit more of the outreach side of it and the engagement side of it. Bellwether doing the observations to understand what this processes are being done now, what's being done in each school, that type of deal. Whereas the advisory committee is the outside community. And so those are the folks who may have an investment in the district, may have maybe a stakeholder in the district, or just may generally want to be guided. So that's what we would traditionally, and that's what we had talked about before, about having some type of sign up or some type of outreach to gather members for. That is something we will still do as part of the process. I think what we'll lean upon Rice to do, and a large part of that is to build that outside committees. The second thing that I will kind of share in our thoughts in this, we have shared with them some of the information with regards to the other outreach efforts we've done and the community leaders and stuff that we've reached out to, both with and I don't know if we've done the Alma search yet with them, but we can share this information as well, but also what we just did with the Council of Great City Schools. And so the list of community members and folks that they should be able to reach out to and get connection with. Leslie Rice was on the call with us, and she seemed really eager and really up to date and understanding. I think it helps that she's also got her own personal connection to the district. So there's a benefit to being already aligned with some of these things, but she understands the city, which is a benefit of having the engagement focus be done out of that. The last thing that I will share before kind of opening it up for comments, I think the biggest thing that we gained from this conversation, though, is that their recognition that the purpose of building the strategic plan will be to really gain a lot of these other things that we've done into separate categories and separate piles. So whether that's having, an academic plan, and then we'd had a finance plan, and then we'd have this plan and that plan, and all these different things that were under siloed spaces. What we really wanted to share with them is that we want that to be a more collective conversation point, so that we have a strategic plan that's also actionable and pushes the district farther than we're imagining right now. Both Bellwether and Rice seem to be really on board with that kind of concept and that kind of work. But we also put on them that there are a lot of strategic things that are going to be holding us back from the state level and other barriers that we need to have as part of that conversation. So we didn't sugarcoat it. We put it all out there in front of them, and they seemed still excited to do it. So it's a great process to get started. So I will open up some discussion from board members. Any questions or thoughts? Board Member Crossett.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for getting this work started, and I appreciate that both groups are in together and that they're collaborating. It seems to be off to a good start. I just had a suggestion on the working groups, which is this bottom group. I believe that we have an audit committee that's got some pretty good brain power, and that might be another working group to consider in this process at some point. And I also think we have at least one employee resource group or an affinity group in the district, which I think is the male teachers of color. Did I say that right? That might be another group to ask for some of their input in this as well. Thank you.
And just thank you for both those suggestions, Mr. Crossett. And just also clarify, the working groups at the advisory committee, these are all like formed committees. There will still be a number of levels of engagement that don't touch to being committee responsibilities. Because I think they talked about meeting with the students, meeting with parents who don't normally talk to us and these different things. So there was absolute space for those groups as well to be part of those working groups, but there will also be engagement beyond just the working groups and the steering committee and the advisory committee. Other board member Bolton.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the work and very excited about the willingness of our community partners to help fund this, very, very big job and timely when we think about all that is ahead of us. I'm a little concerned with the summary here regarding Bellwether and Rice from a standpoint that I know that one of the major influences and impacts of what the board decided was to be talking in terms of the financial parallel, if you will, and the financial realities. I think this seems very thin on the financial aspect, and perhaps I'm not reading enough into it, but I would really like to see a clearer handout, clear characterization of what that financial perspective might produce as is required by what we passed in resolution.
Treasurer Guston.
I will say we spent a good amount of time in the call. It doesn't show in the slide deck,
Okay.
but we did spend a good amount of time on the call talking about the financial realities that we're facing, talking about, making sure, a plan the plan is developed that cannot be afforded, those sort of things. So there was discussion of that and discussion of building out the financial plan. But it's not as explicit in the slide deck, though.
Yeah, and I think it probably needs to, from a standpoint of a public document, to capture what was said in a conversation is helpful for me, but not necessarily gives enough information to the public. Because I know in finance, we talked about it, sort of the model from the preschool promise effort where the financial piece was critical, or where there was an outside group looking into our financial scenarios ahead, as well as our financial history. And I know we are always ready and always have to open our books and get that kind of input. And it would be great if maybe even a memo to the board, a little bit more about what the financial piece might look like. Thank you.
Yeah, and just add on before coming to Board Member Armbruster and Board Member Lindy, this was their presentation prior to talking to us. So this is also not in reflection of the conversation, but more in the reflection of how their strategies of engagement and how Rice and Bellwether would work together. I think a separate presentation would be helpful to have to the board, which is things that we suggested, both when the initial process starts, but then also along the way, which they both seemed amenable to. So. Board Member Armbruster and then Board Member Lindy.
I just wanted to point out on slide 4, it does mention developing financial scenarios aligned to the plan and that. So it is not thorough, but it does at least acknowledge that they're doing that work. So I appreciate that. I don't think we can be very thorough. We're so early in this stage. To President Craig's point, this was like an intro meeting, essentially. We're starting fresh. All I have to say is, like, let's go. I'm excited. Let's get it started. Let's get detailed. I'm ready.
Board Member Lindy.
Thank you. I wanted to start by saying I do agree with Eve on I had the same question about financials. I appreciate what Board Member Armbruster said. It's helpful to see that it is in that slide. I appreciate what the treasurer said, that it was in the conversation. And I'll just echo, I think that is one or two most important parts from this board member's perspective of the entire process. And I'm so glad that it's a part of the conversation. I'll just say a couple of things real quickly. I think three things are true. Our revenue is going down, one. Our costs are going up, two. But the only way I feel like we can ask for new money is if we have a really clear plan for how that's going to lead to a change in student outcomes. I think this process is a great start for having really good answers to all of those questions. I wanted to say specifically that I'm delighted with the pairing of Bellwether and with Rice, because I think we get the best of both worlds, where we have a firm that has national expertise and experience with districts across the country. We should bring the very best of what works to families here in Cincinnati. And there are a lot of great things happening in Cincinnati already that we should make sure stay a part of our strategy or get scaled in our strategy. And so I think having the two of them together, I think is just great. Last thing, two last things. This board owes our superintendent an updated Goal 5 for her evaluation, because the way we wrote it in October assumed that this process would be finished in time for the budget approval, assuming that the budget approval is June 30. I don't know, just for myself, I'm not in a place where I could script that or suggest something tonight, but I would like to challenge us to see if by the end of our next board meeting, could we have approved some language that aligns with this timeline and gets the superintendent clarity on what that fifth goal is going to be for the end of her evaluation year. And the very last thing was, I just want to know what my next step was. If I read this correctly, they will reach out to us to have some kind of initial interview with each board member?
Yeah, so the initial next step from what we left them with was we were giving them feedback on what we want as kind of a more comprehensive idea. So they were supposed to bring back their plan of action, and then that includes, they're going to do a reach out to all of the board members. We were going to, hope maybe we can do that a little bit in this conversation, strategize around the framework of what that might look like, because they were open to suggestions as to what's the best method of communicating both as individual board members, but as the collective board, because I do think there's a value to that as well. So that was something we talked about in the meeting, but we didn't get a concrete answer to. I felt it was better to come back and certainly get some of the feedback from the board in that aspect. I didn't feel confident enough to be able to say this is the only way we're going to do it, but for right now, the next steps will be that they'll produce a document that we can kind of give out to share the strategies, what's the next steps, what they're going to do, the plan of action, and they'll be doing the communications and outreach to board members, community members, everyone in line there, so. Vice President Moffitt.
So I do want to echo a lot of what my colleagues have said, but I won't repeat it. I wanted to understand on slide 5 a little bit more of the differentiation of duties. I do see where there is overlap, but with respect to the timeline and extending it, I just don't clearly see where there's the financial strategic part of the plan, and then there's the academic strategic part of the plan. I just don't see that differentiation. So I don't know if that was something that was discussed that you all could share more of, but I thought that we were going to have 3 plans kind of going on at the same time. And maybe I'm wrong, but if that were my thinking, I wanted to see where Bellwether stopped, Rice picked up, in some of that. Because I thought Rice was doing a lot of the engagement locally, and there's some overlap, but I don't hear, when I look at slide 4 around the timeline. I see who we're going to solicit, but I'm a little concerned about, like, how is that process going to go? Where's Rice going to be and Bellwether going to stop?
Yeah, and I'll give my answer, and then I will certainly allow the superintendent and Treasurer Guston, and even if Mr. Burkhart wants to come on up, he can also add answers. But since he was all along on the call, but the strategy that they're utilizing is that Rice is going to cover a majority of the engagement, if not almost all of the engagement process. And so that means meeting with folks, that means going into schools, talking with students, talking with parents, meeting with all the different groups. The work of building what is going to be a one plan is going to be a lot more of what Bellwether takes the lead on. What we talked about with them is that while we can have all these different plans as part of that strategy, what we really do need is a district that has all these plans connecting into one thing. So we talked about this a little bit in our October work session. I think the treasurer's office, I think the treasurer did the presentation where we had all the different strands of the different plans we have that all need to become together as one giant rope, right? And so the idea is that that is what we're asking Bellwether to produce, is something that would address all of those individual strands that are not separately, because you can't talk about academics if you can't pay for the teachers. You can't talk about student achievement if you're, yeah, the sheet of paper that Board Member Bolton is holding up. But, so we wanted them to be able to encompass all of those things into what was being produced at the end.
Right.
The other part to your question as to their like delineation of work and duties is that because there's going to be continuous discussions and continuous talks, there's going to be a lot of spaces where both Bellwether and Rice will be present, or at least will be using the information together. And so while maybe Rice does the field conversations and pulls the information in, Bellwether might be digesting that information once it's received as part of their discussion, so.
Thank you for that, and I get it. I just don't, and maybe this is too soon to be asking this type of question, but I think we've got a lot going on for our district. It was about financial planning, current and in the future, academic, and then long-term stability, sustainability planning. And I just was not clear, based off of this short timeline of 4 months, which will be extended, on who was doing what. And I understand that they have to go, there has to be some congruence, but I'm just wondering, is like a long-term stability plan more the Bellwether side, and with engagement from Rice? I think I'm ahead of myself on this question too.
Yeah,
and we just need to have.
And maybe just the other part, we'll have them come in and do a presentation to the board, but I think the other part to this is, I wouldn't look at this as who's preparing the plan at this point. I think what we are looking at on their calendar is the first phase is you got to get information. So how are we gathering information? How are we getting information to devise what are those steps that the district needs to do? What are those things the district can do and can't do? What are those things that we financially can't do and can't do? What are those things that we don't have a building to do versus things that we need a building to do, or those type of things?
Yeah.
And then and this is where they also, when we talk about timeline, and it's just, again, please correct me if I'm misstating any of this, the phase 2 and phase 3 are the parts where they felt and in an extended period of time, and mostly phase 3 might be beneficial. They felt phase 1 they could do even in the timeline schedule that was listed, which is just the engagement and getting information and gathering insight. That's largely going to be Rice's lead, since they're here in Cincinnati. The strategy, the other stuff at the end, the development of the actual full plan and how to steps towards implementation, we're going to be a little bit more of where Bellwether took the lead with Rice's support, because again, you'll still be doing engagement while you develop ideas at that part.
So my last point, which is kind of why I'm asking this question, is around, we were asked to solicit any members that we knew in the community, et cetera, for participation with regard to the strategic plan. So I guess that would be community leaders, anyone, partners, et cetera. So I'm just wondering where that would fit. So that's what my question is. So there are some people that want to look for creating an innovative CPS, and they don't want necessarily here and now, but they're like, hey, we need to be, new millennium thinking, and I want to do that. And so I'm wondering, where do we interject those people? So that's why I'm asking that question too.
And
Where do those people go, in what part of the plan? And I guess really Rice will take the lead on that, and we just need to get more information, so.
Yeah, and again, I think there'll be plenty of opportunities for them to be able to communicate. I mean, Leslie Rice talked about multiple ways that she was, whether at basketball games, handing out QR codes so folks can do surveys, whether they are, because we talked about the fact that everybody gets emails, and at some point you become somewhat indifferent to the email you received, and so the different ways to communicate. So they will certainly be able to bring in a strategy and talk through those steps in probably more clarity. Let's go board member Mapp and then board member Ron Brewster.
Just a quick question. So in looking at this, I recognize that this is kind of very broad information. I'm just curious to know how often and how frequent will the board be integrated in terms of, as they're gathering this information, how often will we be included in the discussion to make sure that, one, we're getting the themes that the community is kind of like interested in as around the strategic plan, and also to make sure, as I know Vice Chair Moffitt would discuss, about making sure that the board's voice is also a part of this discussion as well. So I recognize that on this page here, or the slide is saying strategy development, and then going into phase 3 for the implementation. If there could be a clear distinction on when the conversation comes back to the board before we're stepping into that implementation phase. And I do like that you said that there will be opportunities for them to come and do a presentation, so I'm sure that will be helpful. But again, just wanting to know what that cadence would look like for us.
Yeah, and I think that's something we can ask them to kind of bring once they've completed. So, I mean, again, this was their plan before they met with us, and so I think they've now gotten more guidance from us in that discussion to bring a timeline. I think they were also a little bit waiting on the timeline just to decide whether or not we were going to hold fast to kind of that June, July. But what I told them in that meeting, I think I was very adamant about this, is that we would require regular updates to the board, both as they gather information and then as they start talking through solutions, as well as regular conversations with the public, so the public can also give opinions about, do I like this idea? Does this map to what I think the district should look like? No pun intended on that one. But all those things. So I do think there would be regular engagement with the board as to where they are in the process, as well as what particular things that they are looking at or considering. May not be in high detail until it's probably more fleshed out into a plan, but I think as those stages go, they certainly seemed open to that kind of idea.
So I have not met with any of these people. I'm making assumptions here, but based on what I am reading, I think we need to have a better understanding of what we're being presented with. Because what I'm looking at on this slide with the little moons, as I think they look like, is an overlap for the very specific engagement plan. And I think what Dr. Moffitt and Ms. Bolton are looking for is for that same similar concept for what's on page 5, which is the other aspects of the plan. And so they're looking for something that isn't there yet. And so when you give us part of it, which I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just trying to say, like, moving forward, I think it'd be helpful to say, we don't have that piece yet, but what we do have is this before, when it's being presented, so that we have a clear understanding of what has and hasn't been developed. I think it would just help the board to understand, because we're not in those conversations, and it is brand new, right? Like, these are two partners that are just been thrown together. We have an outside funder. Like, this is all really at the beginning stages in a new format that not everyone has been familiar with. So, like, I just want for clarity moving forward for the board that's not involved in these outside meetings, which is appropriate, but like when it's being presented to us, for a little more context behind, this is all we have at this moment and this is why. We will get you more information as it becomes available. Things like that will maybe minimize some of this confusion.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this was intended to be the introduction of information they shared with us. Going forward, what we will likely try and do is to bring more specifics to what the process will be. And then also, again, I was very hopeful that we can have them, if not at our next meeting, at the first meeting in April, to also walk us through kind of where they've been doing the outreach. Leslie had a lot of great ideas, and I think she sells it so much better than I would do. I don't know if superintendent or treasurer disagree with that point, but she was like, we're going to be at everything. We're going to be every bake sale, every school activity, making sure that folks are engaged in the process. So I think they're looking for a lot of robust, which is not dissimilar to what what was shared with us happened during the ALMA process, is gathering a lot of information. But the only thing I will add is that maybe at our next board meeting, what we'll discuss is just revisiting the timeline. I don't want to make people kind of sit down and think about that at this present moment, but just what is a reasonable timeline for that for an end date. You don't want to go too far back, but we also do owe the fact that this process is starting about 2 months behind even our best of goals there to get it started. So, all righty. Treasurer Gustin, please present on your first presentation. I'm going to actually ask us to go a little bit out of order and have you do the budget presentation first before we do the levy presentation. But go ahead, Treasurer Gustin.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, President Craig. They are kind of two sides of the same coin. So, I mean, as I was developing these, there were definitely slides that could have went in either one or could have been flipped around. Rob, if you'll go to the first slide. So a week ago, just a week ago, Mr. Ashley over there presented the 5-year forecast. And so just want to remind folks of some of the takeaways. Big one is revenues will decline from 26 to 27. And then we anticipate they will flatten out from 28 to 30. This is a whole lot of reasons behind that. Property tax reform, decrease in state support, those sort of things. Our cash balances, so in the year cash balance remain around 33 days of available cash. So that is not a lot for an organization of our size. So just a reminder of that. When we did the forecast, we forecast the expenditures to stay with revenues. That was based on a resolution the board passed a couple of years ago. So basically a balanced budget for lack of a word. And then obviously without reduction in spending, we would run out of cash in 2028. One of the things that I noticed from last week's presentation is many people fixated on the worst case scenario slide. So I had a lot of questions about that, but it definitely got people talking. So appreciate it. If you'll go to the next slide, this is our either general fund budget or target. So from 21 to where we're at. So we're looking at FY27 budget target of $627.9 million. That comes straight off of the forecast. It's a reduction of $6.8 million from current year. So that is a 1% reduction, 1.07%, which does not seem like a lot. It will feel like a lot. It will feel like an awful lot. I think part of the issue is this will be the second kind of year in a row where we're having a declining budget target. So I think that can be difficult. You can also see there the 22 to 24 years, those years we had a lot of ESSER money. And so that allowed us to do a lot of things with the ESSER money, and so we didn't feel having those low general fund budget numbers those years as much. So that is where we are. You have to just talk about some newer returned items. Go ahead, Rob. You're rolling. So step increases are about $6 million a year, whether we like it or not. Those are baked into the contracts. The cost of living adjustment will add about $16 million to next year's budget. And then if you remember last year, one of the things we did to get to balance was defer a device lease payment for a year. And so that's coming back. So all those are kind of the big ticket things that are coming back. There's also things to look at, facility repairs. Many of our contracts are multiple year contracts that have an uplift built into them. Insurance gets more expensive to insure that our buildings, our property, liability. High level, most things that we purchase are going to have about a 3 to a 5% uplift. So just in general with the rate of inflation and all the things, that's what we're looking at. So So it is very difficult to do the exact same things we did when everything gets 3 to 5% more expensive. If you go to the next slide, Rob, kind of how we build the budget. So the box in the middle is our target, and then we put all these other little boxes in. So for school-based budgets, we kind of have it into 3 boxes. We have the school-managed staff. So those are the staff that are formulaically based on projected enrollments. We have some centrally managed staff at the schools. So a lot of folks who provide special services to our students. And then the schools have some non-personnel funds as well. On the centrally managed side, we've kind of broken those into 4 categories. Top one is legal compliance, which we'll talk a little more about. And then we kind of have a high, medium, and low priority. And kind of all the budget requests are in there. So initial all-in request is $702 million. So that was everyone's request all put together as of last week. Yep. We spent a couple days looking through them. We are down to 687. So we definitely took some off the top right away. And so obviously there's more to take off the top, and we'll talk through that. But the first thing I wanted to talk about, if you go to the next slide, Rob, is legal compliance. So there are a lot of options in how a school district's budget is built, but there are some things that aren't really optional. And these are the things, I think last year we called them fixed and obligated. This year, a little bit broader definition, but these are legal compliance things. So these are things that we legally have to do for 1 of 2 reasons. And one reason is to operate a school district. So every school district has to have a superintendent. Every school district has to offer certain classes, certain services, certain things. The other side of that is we also have all the things we have to do legally to operate a business of more than 50 employees. So like one thing we have to do is we have to offer health insurance to our employees. That is part of being a business of over 50 employees. That's part of the Affordable Care Act. Same thing with, I just think in the treasurer's office shop, a lot of the payroll reporting stuff, all those things are required, to meet Federal Fair Labor Standards Act. So putting those 2 things together, that gives you kind of a group that we're going to call legal compliance. And these are non-discretionary things that allow us to maintain business operations. So was hoping to have something for you today, but we haven't quite got there. But we're doing kind of a review process of the legal compliance stuff. So we've looked at all the initial requests. We've categorized those. We've done peer review. So we've done a couple rounds of peer review, working with the people who are hands in the budgets to see, being sure we try to level set across different departments, which can be difficult. It's very different. So curriculum is very different than finance, which is very different than technology. So level setting there. And kind of the one piece that we're working on currently, I would say, is reviewing of dependencies. So if I think something is legally compliant that requires, software, and Jeremy, Mr. Gallagher over there thinks that we don't need that software, well, then we're going to have a problem. So we have to look at those dependencies to make sure that we have roughly the same level of priority on those dependencies. And then the final piece that we're also working on is packaging, packaging up all this information to have the right level of detail so that it's easily understandable, obviously for the board, and for other stakeholders. So that is where we are at. Hopefully, I don't know, President Craig, if you want to talk a little bit about the schedule, you look like you're...
So I will just say we were working through kind of devising a schedule for when the next proposals will come before us. Our hope is to have something at the next meeting that we can vote on, and then just kind of continuously keep building the budget up from there. But we will certainly bring back a plan of a kind of a schedule of actions at the next meeting to at least get us going. We can always adjust the schedule, but it's good to start with the schedule. Questions? Board Member Crossett.
Will this schedule still target June 30th, or will it be more in line with the strategic plan?
No, it'll be, because we got to pass the budget by no later than June 30th. Okay. So it will be so that we finished and are voting on the final kind of full package of information that gives the authorization and all the lovely stuff at the last meeting of June.
So there's components of the strategic plan that could some of that financial information could be beyond 1 year that we could
Yeah.
address in July.
The strategic plan should be well beyond, it should be at least 4 to 5 year plan, so. Board Member Mapp.
Just a thought, and maybe Treasurer Guston as well as you can help me kind of process through this. So I do appreciate the scheduling piece in terms of the budget. I know in finance, we talked about presenting those legally required budgetary, things that we have to account for, which is totally understandable. My thought, though, that presents maybe a challenge is, if we're having like this regular flow of different packages and we're voting on that, I'm wondering what that would look like kind of on the back end if we don't have that full picture to know, like, okay, we're making a sacrifice here, but what the impact would be later if we're presented with a different option. So I'm just kind of thinking through like the pros and the cons of that, because, we've had in, previous experiences where we've voted on something and then maybe we weren't, to the point that you shared last time, like, well, we voted on this, but now we're not necessarily satisfied with that, then what do we do? So I'm just, again, processing through the benefits of it and obviously the challenges of it, and if there's a way for us to be able to have that, I guess, that sweet spot where we're still able to actively work through the budget, but again, also not kind of confine ourselves, right?
Yeah, certainly. I think if we had a word to describe the last couple budget processes, one word, it would be painful. And so, but I think, not to get so far in front of ourselves, but you look at this budget target, 627.9, but that's not a real number because there are so many legally compliant things we have to do. So part of it is take that off the table, and that number now changes. Now we have a smaller number to fit, but we've also ensured this bottom layer. We have obviously, administration has kind of things layered in levels, and so our next level would be what we call the high priorities. We colloquially call those the must-haves, but these are the things that we must have. So that would be the next group to talk about once we get through legal compliance. And we can talk about, legal compliance should be kind of the easy one. It should be the easy win, but we can use it to test out the amount of information. Is it too much? Is it not enough? Does it make sense? Those sort of things, kind of like the test case, before we get to decisions that are going to be harder.
I think just to add really quick onto it, I think the goal in us doing votes is not so much that we would vote on like full ideas or packages all the time, but sometimes it's about giving direction to the administration. So if we're saying that we're not willing to get rid of this, or we would prefer to do something bigger with this, those things, they would need to be able to create those options as to what the budget would look like. And I think the more we're able to do some of that clear direction. So like legal compliance will be one that we just vote on legal compliance, like that's stuff we gotta do. But there are other things that we may vote on, like, is this the direction we want to go in? And if so, that gives the treasurer and the superintendent the guidance they need to be able to create the options or the recommendations.
That's really helpful. Again, I just, wanted to caution against us getting so far down, the line where we may not be in a position to kind of recover from it.
So Board Member Lindy and then Dr. Moffitt.
It's great, thank you. I think this next year's budget is going to be challenging for all kinds of reasons. I think the treasurer's articulated that better than I can. I think it's also just connecting to our previous conversation. It's going to be a budget that we have to pass. I suppose the strategic planning process will be finished by the time we pass this budget. But I know there's another presentation tonight about a levy. And wherever that lands, there certainly would not be a new source of revenue that would have been identified. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Yeah.
I would say we have to plan for the revenue that we've done in the forecast.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be, I just say that because it's going to be both challenging and potentially odd, because it may, best case scenario, it's not necessarily representative of the long-term picture. Is that fair?
Fair.
And I'm agreeing with you, Treasurer, that we have to plan based on the revenue in the forecast. We can't invent future sources that don't exist yet. Gratitude, empathy, managing my own expectations for what the next several months are going to look and feel like around here. And I was going to ask for the superintendent, what goes in this high priority items category feels really important, because it can't be a lot of things. And so from my perspective, and this is where, it doesn't need to be tonight, but going forward, I'd love to hear your opinion, is, what's informing those high priority items? And in my sense, it's got to be two things. One is, we do have a set of goals this year. We have a goal in third grade reading, we have a goal in Algebra 1, we have a goal in reducing the gap in reading based on income in sixth grade. We have a goal on improving the number of high point workforce credentials that are available. My sense is we should be learning some things this year about what's really important for driving those numbers and what's not working. And so what would go in that green category for next year would be informed by lessons learned from what's worked this year. The other input would be whatever comes out of the strategic planning process, like whatever we could pull off in a first year without additional revenue. I'd love to hear any thoughts or reactions you have.
Yeah, I agree with you, Board Member Lindy. And actually, it's not even just what we're learning this year, but also for me last year, because there were some things that we put in place last year that we invested in, that I think it would be important to wrap our arms around them, because there are some things that we learned from moving one piece that we believe will benefit us instructionally across the board in all grade levels and all tested areas. And then also, it's really important to me to make sure the kids are graduating in a productive way. So yes, the goals that we currently have are informing it for me. The directors being at the table with us, that's part of the direction, and some information that we're getting, and not doing this in isolation.
Thank you.
So I wanted to, I'm always going a little last, so I kind of want to expand on some things that were shared. For me, when I look at this, and having lived through package voting multiple times before, I didn't like it. So I wanted to share with you what would be helpful for me as a board member to actually be able to make what I'm calling informed, responsible decisions. I would like to see where the cuts that are proposed are impacting academics. Because we have made cuts, last year we lived through that, and I'm wondering if some of those cuts had a direct impact on curriculum and the delivery of successful academics, like for the ELA manager specifically. We are cutting, we're thinning things out, and we're asking people to do more. And so I kind of want to know, if we're going to cut this position for fiscal reasons, how is that going to be reassumed? Is it going to just go away, or is it actually going to be put into another job description? And can that really happen? Because we're trying to also navigate bargaining units. So how is the academic work impacted by the cuts that are being proposed? That will also help me differentiate and kind of understand high priorities. They say, show me your budget and I'll show you what your priorities are. And so if I don't see a lot in it, but around engagement, then that's not a high priority, but I'd love to have that automatically defined. I also would like to see new ideas differentiated versus continuation of existing services. Well, I think it's really nice that, and it is needed, I don't want to dismiss the fact that we need to be more for students, because our students are coming in with a larger need. our responsibility is academics. And so I'm really interested to see or have some differentiation in the budget description when we get to having these on the floor. What is a new idea of the administration and what's an expansion of existing programming? So, I like some of the things that we're doing, but they feel more social service to me. And I want to make sure that we're not expanding social service initiatives and we're actually shoring up academics. For me, the barometer is the goals that we've established. So I'm specifically looking at cuts to areas that are going to be impacting those academic goals that we've set around algebra, reading. They're already established as higher priority categories. So I don't really want to see cuts to things that are going to impact those areas and be more supportive in a social service manner. None of this is new, but I don't want to necessarily do you want me to define social service? So I don't think any of this is new, but I do think that that would help me when we do package recommendations. I would love to see like just some color coding, just something to say, hey, this is a new initiative that we're proposing for 26, 27, or 27, 28, and it's for this reason. That would be helpful for me.
Board Member Crossett.
I wanted to echo Board Member Lindy's not here to hear me say this, but I like the idea that we should attach the budget to the goals, but we also got to keep in mind what goals we're going to set in the future. And I also think it was in my mind immediately what the superintendent said, to look maybe back 1 year at those goals as well, because all of that needs some continuation to make sure we have sustainable success. I do want to make a suggestion regarding Board Member Dr. Moffat's comments, in that it might be another way to frame this as a suggestion, rather than looking at what's been cut. Maybe we can look at what we're building and where we've had to provide some innovation to meet student outcomes versus necessarily, it just might be another lens to look at it that way that might be equally helpful. So just a suggestion.
Board Member Bolton.
Thank you. Several things. I think for me, that we not only have to build this budget for this coming year and as a third or whatever of our new strategic plan, but I think we have to build it so that there is room to have our strategic plan. Because right now, the budget, when we have the requests at a certain amount, and we've got to get it to this certain amount, and we're going to be making choices that way. It would seem to me that we have to, alongside that, we have to save some range of action and priority and dollars to put into place a strategic plan. When we've done that seriously before, we added money in particularly the first year or the second year of a strategic plan. And it's needed because you do have, you're trying to build something new. And again, budget invariably, we're just rehashing or re-establishing the status quo. And virtually all of our initial planning is about maintaining the status quo. And in this kind of year, we have to be looking at something beyond the status quo. I think it's going to be really obvious to the public that we're going to be coming to them for a request. I don't think we can come to them for a request without being able to demonstrate that we have been fiscally responsible. I think, too, it's perfect timing for a request if indeed we continue to be fiscally responsible, and if we have bellwether and we have Rice and we have on the table a strategic plan. I think that will help sell something that certainly people don't want to have to face, which is that we need more money. I think if a program is helping, this will sound really bad, I think if a program or an effort is supporting or helping grown-ups within the system, I think those things will be cut. Because we cannot cut what is helping children and teenagers. And that's going to fall to the administration to try to figure that out. Supporting the grown-ups is part of what we need to do, and it's essential. And directly or indirectly, it does help kids. But these kinds of cuts or choices or building for the future, we're no longer at a place where everything we do, well, let's say this, we are at a place now that where everything we do is going to have a negative impact somewhere. And you have to figure out where you want to have that negative impact. And we don't want to have it on our young people, first and foremost. I think, too, we're going to have to figure out, I know there's dollars that are contributed to supporting the schools, but maybe located in the central office. All those things are essential and important, but to the degree that we can redistribute our resources actually where the children are, that's gonna be important for me. And I'm concerned of just one thing, and I want to follow up. I don't know what social service means. And I'm hearing that thematically the last couple of weeks in a dialogue within the district, and I want to know what that means. Because yes, we are also a social service, and we have been for at least 3 decades, and long before that. I got to know what that is. Does that mean we don't want to provide health anymore at school-based health centers? Does that mean we don't want to have social workers in our schools? Do we not want to feed the kids? Do we not want to transport them because they can't get here by themselves? I'm having trouble. The whole child concept is really rooted on academic growth, student growth, but it is also as whole child recognizing that in our environment, unlike the environment in which I taught for 36 years in Wyoming, Ohio, all of that social service embracing and supporting and serving and spending $50 million on transportation is all part of us achieving things academically. And I know this board is committed deeply to our kids, but it is going to be part of how we have to figure out priorities. You're absolutely right to ask about it. But it's, in this district, it's so intertwined because of our population. But for me, I want to put as much of our resources in the buildings as we can, and our central office is already understaffed totally. I completely believe that. We're going to figure out if there's departments or groups that we are not making success, fix and get rid of or what have you. But this is going to be a very difficult budget, and if we don't do this right, we have no chance of even asking for a levy and being successful. So this is big several months ahead of us, but I have confidence in our board and I have confidence in the community. But I think we do have big questions to ask each other about how we're going to do it. I have one last thing, if I might. In ballpark, assure us about our debt.
Okay, in ballpark.
In ballpark. We'll
Okay.
make a chart later,
Yeah.
or we'll look at some chart he's already done. But go ahead.
I could call Mr. Ashley up on the spot, but I won't. He and I did have a conversation about debt after someone put that bug in my head that there may be a conversation. The big part of the debt, we have 2 types of debt. We have voted and unvoted. The voted debt is our bond levy, and that's part of that funds the facilities master plan. That is paid off at the end of December 2031. And so that is a huge, as we get into the levy discussion, that is a huge opportunity for us because it will be actually a tax levy coming off the books. So that's big. We also have a good amount of unvoted debt. So that's what's we colloquially call COPS here. But the COPS, there's some other bond issues as well. There were unvoted debt for things like energy efficiency improvements. We continue to pay those off. We paid one off last year. We're going to pay one off this year. The vast majority of that goes away after 2032. And we have, I think, one COPS issue, the one that we did when we bought the Mercy property, that does run until 2038. But we will be much less, we have much less debt after 2032.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll go around quickly for any last comments on this, but I do want to remind folks, we have several more presentations to go. So Board Member Lindy.
Yeah, I'm going to help and reserve my comment for the levy presentation that the treasurer's about to do, but it responds to what Ms. Bolton was saying about whether this is a good time or not a good time to go for levy, and I'll bring it up then.
All right, anyone else before we hit the next presentation? Vice President Moffitt.
Well, I feel like perhaps Board Member Bolton was asking me the question around social service, so I'm happy to define. Sorry, I just put a piece of bar in my mouth. Yeah, I know. So I believe in everything that you just said. We are to support the whole child. I think that unfortunately, districts across the nation, in addition to ours, are having to do more with less. And that is inclusive of providing extra transportation, providing extra food, providing coats, providing things that we should not have to do, but we are having to do that, which is what I am calling social services. Okay, I believe that academic support of the child is inclusive of the community learning center model. Absolutely. I think we need to have medical there. It's on site. It's for our students. Dental there. It's on site. It's for our students. It helps them during the day so that that takes that burden away from parents having to bring them back in. I 150% support that. I also believe and recognize that our job is to be fiscally responsible. And so we need to do, I've said this multiple times, many different ways, to this administration and others, we have to bring in partnerships because we cannot afford to do what we've been doing the way that we've been doing it. And if it's between something that I'm calling a social service and academics, our charge is academics. Let's bring in supports for the social, for the other piece of that. I think it is fully, we can absolutely do it. I don't know if we've done it to the extent that I'm thinking in the past, definitely not in the most recent past, but it is incumbent upon us to solicit to the community very accurately and succinctly what our need is and how we can maintain what we have and build upon that in order for us to pass any levy. And I treat the levy discussion as how would I, as the regular taxpaying citizen, want to be treated? I want to see that you are being responsible, but I don't want to see a decrease in services, so that might be one way. We've not told that story enough or succinctly enough. And so that's what I'm saying, is we have to call upon some of these other partners who are willing, or if they're not, say that they're not. But we've not done that because we've done a lot extra above and beyond academic support for our kids to the point where I think we're going to stretch ourselves thin. So that's what I'm talking about when I say social service. I do not want to degrade any of the work that's been done, but I do think that for us to go out and be supportive of external programs fully in lieu of supporting our own, or we're cutting managers, we're cutting significant positions that have an impact on academics. They absolutely do. And so I would rather see us not support something that is more social service, that's optional and maybe doesn't benefit a large number of students, than to cut a curriculum management position. And I'm just giving that as an example, when our scores have a possibility of declining because of that. I don't want the responsibility to pick which position. That's why I said tie it to the goals. Whatever our goals that we've established as a board, I want to make sure that those positions are shored up so that we're not losing the integrity of our framework and that we have the ability to build in the future. But if we keep thinning everything down to do everything and be everything for everybody, then we're not going to have a sure enough foundation. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm saying to you, that's my definition. I don't want to cut anything, but we've heard multiple times that we have to. And that's the reality that we live in. But I do think we can do something similar. It can't look the same, but we gotta be honest and have honest conversations. And we may not be able to expand the same way. We gotta think differently. And I've invited this administration to think creatively along with others, so.
Alrighty. So we're going to go to the next topic, which is still with Mr. Guston. So I'm sure some of these comments will still flow through there. This, by the way, was the long presentation that we're about to have. So, Mr. Guston, tell us about levies.
Let's talk about levies. If you go to the next slide, Rob. So some of these slides are just a reminder for folks. So I feel like we have a common levy slide deck that we kind of reuse in that way. But that way, no one has to go looking. Key things on this slide. The big one is first election date. So the last time this district went for new money was November of 2016. So that is 10 years. That is an admirable record. And then obviously also seeing that the bond levy expires, as we discussed, in 2031. If you keep going, Rob, again, this is not new. This is kind of when the existing levies expire. I think the takeaway from this is there is a nice gap between now and 2029 for doing something new when you're not competing with the expiration of anything existing. If you go to the next slide, Rob, what's available to us now? This list has gotten much shorter over the last year, but in general, there's two types of levies. So there are levies that are either the current expense levy or school district income tax that you can use for operations or assets. And then there are levies that can only be used for assets, and that's your permanent improvement levy or your bond levy. So if we need new operational funds, if that is our desire, you're looking at the top two. And then the bottom two would be used for things that have a life of more than 5 years. All right, keep going, sir. So we are not the only folks in this boat. So this is a chart of all of the school districts in our area that are going to be on the May ballot. You can see a lot of folks that we have contact with here. A lot of income taxes, as you notice. A lot of schools are going for the school district income tax. There are some traditional property tax as well, but you can see, a wide gap, everything from 1.3 mils in Xenia to 8 mils in New Richmond. I mean, that's so a lot of school districts are already kind of seeing the writing on the wall. I think as everyone's 5-year forecasts get filed, and they were due last Friday, you'll see even more districts having the same conversation we are. So this is property tax reform. This is districts going to the ballot more often. Keep going, Rob, please. Looking at November specifically, so we know there will be a children's services levy on the ballot in Hamilton County. City of Cincinnati has discussed changing their earnings tax. We do not have any updates since the mayor's State of the City address. Some big elections. Obviously, it's a congressional midterm, but it's also there's a U.S. Senate seat up, all the House members, and the governor, and all the Ohio statewide offices. And just to make things interesting, there's a potential for the constitutional amendment that would abolish property taxes completely. We will call that local government Armageddon. That completely changes how local governments will be funded in Ohio. So all of that could be on the ballot in November, along with if the district decided to do something. So this next slide is our final filing deadlines. So the May 2026 election is set. We're past that filing deadline. The deadline for November is early August, and then May of 27 is early February, and then August 4th of 27. So that is the filing deadline. Before the filing deadline, we'd need to have two resolutions passed. If you go to the next slide. Talk about that a little bit. There's an initial resolution required to start the process. That needs to be at least 100 days before the election. That gives us authority to go to the county auditor. They certify the millage and the ballot language. The ballot language will be different this year, so that was another part of House Bill 96. The property tax reform is instead of based on appraised value, based on market value. So folks voting will see, this amount of dollars for every $100,000 of market value. That will be a fairly large change. If the decision would be to do an income tax, there's an additional step in that the county auditor certifies the millage, and then the Ohio Department of Taxation converts that millage into a percentage. So that lengthens out the process a little bit. And then your second resolution is an intent to proceed, and that would need to be passed before the filing deadline. August 3rd conveniently is the last business meeting before that deadline. Keep going. Starting, I think December Finance Committee, we did do some scenario runs, just to kind of just to set some boundaries of what a new money request would look like. These are mathematical projections. They're not really based on any deep discussions. They're based on looking at percentages and using some round numbers. So the work of the strategic plan, the work that's done in the next couple months would kind of fill those things in. So if you keep going, Rob, you can see there we did 4 scenarios. They have a range there of how things are done, if there's money set aside for new initiatives, the facilities repair plan, how much of that we would try to do per year, non-personnel percentages, and then person salary and benefit percentages, all different types of increases. If you go to the next slide, you can see what that looks like as far as total new revenue, annual amount, estimated millage, and the estimated school district income tax rate. So a couple things there. We base these scenarios on a 5-year levy. So part of the idea was how to get to 2032. That was part of the idea, but also now that kind of we're off the 20 mil floor, now that levy fees have changed, we're in a more traditional levy environment. So kind of the way a lot of other entities do is you figure out over a 5-year period how much money you need. You divide that by 5, and you set your millage that way. Generally, you will take in more money in years 1 and 2, and that's the idea. The idea is you take in more money than you spend in years 1 and 2. You kind of break even in year 3, and then years 4 and 5, you spend the money from years 1 and 2. So, and that just allows your expenses to increase over time. So you can see here we have everything from 5.67 to 11.84 mils as possibilities. And again, this is just for the board to just think about, just to set some ideas about what it looks like. The other thing on here is the school district income tax. So there are 2 types of school district income tax that can be levied. Traditional uses just your gross income from your state of Ohio tax form. That your traditional earned income is only on wages, so it gets withheld. It's only on wages. A lot of districts have really pushed the earned income as a thing. It does not generally, it's not going to be taxed on people's Social Security, their retirement, their investments. So for folks who are trying to give a lot of relief to your senior citizens, it does tend to help out retirees because they're not paying it. I did round income tax rates to the nearest quarter percentage, so there's a big gap there. That's why the bottom two are the same. It's just the percentage gets you enough money to cover both of those. All right, Rob, if you'll continue, it kind of brings me to the end of this for questions. So we did this graph last year to try to figure out how we got to renewal. It was easier to get to renewal. But we've basically 3 dimensions, what type of levy? Is it a current expense? Is it income tax? There's a way to do a permanent improvement levy and kind of get the same benefit, because you would use a permanent improvement levy to then pay off your unvoted debt. That would free up money, free up operational money. And then how long, you can put a levy on for as short as 1 year, as long as 5 years, or obviously there's the option for continuing. Some of the other options are no longer options, based on the thing. And then obviously the big question is the amount. So once all three of those things are known, then we have enough information to move forward with a resolution.
All right. Again, this is part of the reason I wanted us to do the budget conversation first today, because we were not doing a vote on that. But I think this helps clarify and color some of the conversation around what does the levy options look like. Are there any questions from board members? Member Crossett.
I have a comment that relates to the prior topic. I'll just do it fast. I agree with Dr. Moffitt about the partnerships. I want to be sure that we include whatever partnerships that we are thinking about trying to pursue within our strategic plan. And I really think the whole partnership process and solicitation, et cetera, should be driven by our district and by our strategic plan. So, and the district needs to own that. So, but I think it's a great idea. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Other board members? Board Member Armbruster.
Oh, man, this is a tough one. So, super fun. I think this is a really, really difficult position for the board, because to board member Lindy's point, going to get money without understanding the strategic plan is a really tough decision to make. And I understand all the reasons why we have pushed back the timeline for the strategic plan, and I do think overall it's in the best interest for us to have done that. Now we're on this deadline for having to pass this resolution, and I'm in this position where I don't feel super confident in asking anything when I don't really even know what the future of the district looks like. But it's difficult. So I think for me, I want to publicly talk about how important I think this facility repair plan portion of this new money request sizing scenario pieces. We've talked about it. That facility repair plan is the basics. It does not include anything future. That's not just making sure we have heating and functional roofs, not to mention if anything new happens. So that continues to grow and change every day. And that is something we really, really need to make sure we have funding for. Obviously, salary and benefits are incredibly important as well. But I think for me, that facility repair portion is something I'm really focused on, because I not only want us to have the money to make sure our schools are safe and functional, but also things that our students and our staff want to be in. They're welcoming, they are bright, and they are places that people can grow and thrive in. And to do that, we need to be able to afford it. So outside of all the reasons why it's really important for us to have a strategic plan to be able to show to the taxpayers that we have a bright future to work towards, I also think it's really important for us to set aside this money to make sure that our buildings are in the right position. And Mr. Burkhart missed my first part, but I promise you I talked very highly. There you go.
I'm sure Mr. Burkhart was grinning from ear to ear as you spoke there. Other board members? Mr. Lindy.
Yeah, thanks, President Craig. I think I agree with a lot of what Member Armbruster just shared. I think it would be very, very, very difficult for me. I don't think this is what the treasurer is suggesting. As we're planning out a process for where we go, it would be very difficult for me to vote in support of a levy when there isn't a plan yet. And I think we can do it. I really do. I think it will be difficult, and it might cause us to need to adjust some pieces of timing with the planning process. I just don't see that we have another choice. This is a segue back to what Member Bolden was sharing in the previous presentation. I think there are reasons why it is clear to the public that why a district like ours would be asking for a levy at a moment right now. At the same time, I also think there are reasons why that's a very tough sell. It could be a tough sell, A, because, as is part of the presentation too, other government organizations around here may also be asking for increases. Two, I think just the affordability crunch is something that is on the minds of lots and lots of voters right now. And third, our third grade reading scores went down last year. I think it is hard to ask for more money unless there's a really clear plan that people can understand for how we're going to improve outcomes for students. I think we can do those things. I just think that's what the bar is. And we have to align all of these processes so that we can do this the right way. But one other thing I wanted to mention, if we go back 2 slides to slide 10, and I know I touched base with the treasurer about this earlier. I've been around long enough to have seen a lot of different budget processes, not as long as every member of this board, but longer than most. And it often feels to me as though we are backing into a number by thinking through, well, we do this first, then we do this first, and then we do this next. And then how much do we have left, and what's our gap to close? How do we get to a budget that breaks even while cutting as little as possible? And I understand where that comes from. I think it comes from a good place of wanting to do right by people. And at the same time, I don't think that's the right way to build a budget. I think we have to start with what's the vision for what we can do for children? What will it cost for us to do that? Why do we think we have a real plan to accomplish that? And then if that costs more than we're currently getting, we need to go raise the rest. But it works backwards from something inspiring that we can do together for children, not backing into a number. And so I was originally concerned when I saw this slide because it felt like we're backing into a number that we need to go ask for so we can keep doing the things that we're doing. I think that's backwards. And so I want to hold a very high bar for how we do this. I think we should do this, but it's got to center a strategy for student outcomes. It's got to tie all these pieces together. And I'm going to just keep bringing this up, I think, as we go through the weeks and months ahead. Thank you.
If I could just, I appreciate the discussion earlier today.
And Treasurer Guston is great, and he had great answers to all my questions, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation earlier today, and thought it would be useful for everyone to hear. So these are, like I said, these are mathematical projections. So there are lots of ways to get to these numbers. So for example, salaries and benefits increase of 4%. We took current year numbers and just added that on each year, but there's lots of ways to get to that. Does that mean you have more staff? It's a number. There's lots of ways to get to 4%. Does it mean all the existing staff get a 4% increase? Maybe. Does it mean we add new staff? Does it mean we have less staff, but they get a higher increase? There's lots of ways to do it. Same with the non-personnel stuff. I think that's a little easier. You could say all your contracts go up by the rate of inflation. That's probably not true. Some contracts we will choose to no longer do. There may be new contracts that come in. Some of those will be more expensive. Some of those, we may find cheaper ways to do things. So yeah, this analysis, just take it for what it was, which was looking at the highest level of our budget, the highest object level, which one bucket is salaries and benefits, one bucket is non-personnel. I mean, even higher than I think what I present in the forecast. And then looking at, what percent of the facilities repair plan will we do? And if we set aside money completely without strings, and again, this is where the strategic plan builds these in. If we set aside $5 million with no strings today, but we know as we build the plan, we would say, okay, these are things that are critical to the plan that need those funding. So that I just wanted to point that out.
All right. Board Member Bolton.
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Lindy's phrase about backing into a number. I think that is what we have been doing over any number of years, and I think that's why it's been 10 years that we've been able to not ask for new money. I think the previous treasurer and the current treasurer have kept us within a range of fiscal responsibility and expenditure based on revenue, of which we are proud. and even passing resolutions, the last 2 or 3 years, saying that we would, of course, we're going to have a balanced budget. We have to have a balanced budget, but the idea that we are limited by our revenue. This is very, very important, and that's part of our message to the public. But I do think that the levy plan is happening regardless of what the strategic plan is. The strategic plan is not going to necessarily influence the levy plan as much as our expenditures right now, our budget, and what we know of the forecast is going to happen. The forecast is going to be demanding a levy plan. But I do think we are in danger of extending that timeline for the strategic plan too long, because we can last vote in August for a levy, but you wait till August to vote for a levy, you don't have enough time to run the campaign. So we're going to have to find some sweet spot where we have some comfort with the budget, with the strategic plan. But again, I like that phrase of backing into a number. Zero base is too hard to do. We try it, and it is silly. It's the only way to figure out how you don't back into it. But I do think the work that we did last year on student-based budgeting proved to make some sense for our neighborhood schools. It made no sense for our magnets or for Montessori or high school. We couldn't even figure out how to do student-based budgeting with high school. But so there's maybe different ways. Central office, maybe half of the departments in central office can really do zero base and get rid of the idea of what would be nice to have. That can't even be in our vernacular. Nice is now a 4-letter word on this budget because it's not that anymore. We don't have the money for what would be nice. And it isn't just need, it is something that makes a difference. If that dollar is not going to make a difference, then don't spend it. And it's very, very important that that kind of energy and creativity occurs around here, but mostly with the professionals that actually have to make all those sorts of decisions and recommendations. I'm encouraged by the whole discussion and the crisis that we're in. And very frankly, as much as you may not believe it, we are in so much better place than almost any of our cohort around the state. And that's how bad they're in. That's.
All right, I'm going to go Dr. Moffitt and then Board Member Lindy.
So I just want to very friendly disagree with my colleague that the strategic plan isn't going to influence a levy, because the definition of a strategic plan is to define the organization's long-term directions, goals, and actions. So we need to be asking people to invest in our vision of the future in a levy. So, and maybe this is just me, but if we don't do the strategic plan with fidelity and engagement and getting the community to understand where we are, understand our challenges, and then help us buy into our vision, then I don't know how they're gonna wanna pass a levy and support a levy if we don't do that at the same time and with fidelity in the strategic planning process, which is also why I think the continual requests for engagement of everybody, partners and everybody around the strategic plan is so significant and important, because we're asking people to fund a vision for the future. And so there are people, I think we need to do things differently. There are people who believe in the same thing and they're not going to fund the same thing. So I just wanted to disagree that I think the levy discussion has to be not as loud, but just as robust as the strategic plan. And if it's not, I don't have any interest in funding a levy, putting a levy on the ballot that's not going to be successful. And so I just wanted to.
Point of clarification, okay.
Go ahead.
Well, let's first go to Board Member Lindy, and then we'll come back to you, Board Member Bolton.
I'll be quick. I think I just agree with Dr. Moffett. I was going to say something very similar. I was going to ask Member Bolton if she was suggesting we vote for a levy without a strategic plan, and I wanted to register my unwillingness at this moment to do so.
I appreciate the opportunity to clear up what I said that gave that impression. I think I talked about the timing of the strategic plan and the timing of the levy. Whether or not we have a strategic plan or not, we're going to have a levy. And your operational money and your forecast has demonstrated that. Now, do I think that the strategic plan will help sell this levy, rightfully so, if it's a good one? Yes. Do I think the strategic plan is the most important thing we're working on right now? Yes. But the timing of the strategic, and then I said, that's why I didn't think I thought we should be very careful about extending how long we're going to take on the strategic plan. So I was not clear in my communication. Whether or not we have a strategic plan, our operational forecast shows we're going to have a levy. Now, that levy will, I think, be very much impacted by the strategic plan. And our budget will be greatly impacted by that strategic plan. Nothing, I was saying the timing is what's important here. And so there's a confluence, there's a dovetail in the whole piece, but whether or not we have a strategic plan, that forecast is telling us we have to have a levy.
All right, very quickly, Board Member Armbruster.
I would just say, I understand where you're coming from. We definitely need new money. I think this report shows that we have a couple of opportunities for that levy. I'm not saying I want to push it away from this fall at this point, but I am also saying, to Board Member Lindy's point, I'm not interested in putting something on I don't think will succeed. And I don't think without clear direction, we can genuinely put something out there that we believe will succeed. So I think it is in the best interest of the district to ensure we have a strategic plan we all believe in before we put a levy on. And if that means we need to wait until next spring, that's what that means in my opinion, in my vote. And that's just my one person.
Very quickly, Mr. Crossett.
Yes, I'm always pretty quick. I try to be. Hey, I like Ben Lindy's comment about, what does it really take? What's the cost it really takes to have successful student outcomes? The state of Ohio has a fair school funding formula that's the root design behind that is exactly that. It's not about how much money do we have to spend. It's how much money is needed to have good student outcomes. So what might be interesting is to see what our funding would be if the fair school funding were there. I don't know if that'll help the levy conversation. It might just be interesting information. But Ohio, our state of Ohio has a wonderful program that's not being used. And so whether that's advocacy or whatever. So it's the same concept. So thank you. The money for matter, Mike, Money for Matters, what's it called?
Money Matters with Mike.
Money Matters with Mike.
Go look at those YouTubes because they explain all that wonderfully. We've had some great guests, so thank you.
So I'll be very quick in my, sorry, Board Member Mapp.
Just quickly echo what all of my colleagues have said, because I'm hearing two things obviously occur at once. Obviously, we have to have a strong vision, right? And also we are in a state of fiscal emergency is what I'm hearing Board Member Bolton speak to. I wanted to bring Treasurer Guston in a conversation as well, because you talked about timing. And so I know that in our Finance Committee meeting, you spoke about how 28 is a critical year for us, how things begin to flatten out, right, where our revenue remains flat. Can you speak about that, what that critical timing would look like? What are the impacts, obviously, and then also how there's a delayed, I guess, revenue that we receive from passing the levy. So I'm just trying to speak to both of the concerns that are being brought up, because yes, we do know that we need our community to obviously support the levy and pass it also, but just the state of emergency that we are in with our finances as a result of the things that are happening from a state level with property reform.
Sure. Let me try to tackle both of those pieces. Starting out with the forecast, I think. Yeah, our revenue is incredibly flat based on the forecast. It goes down a little next year, bounces back up, but it stays flat. And the problem with that is as hard as getting to the budget was last year, it's going to be that much harder this year. It'll be that much harder the next year, the year after, the year after. It's just there's no inflationary increases built into the forecast, and that's by design from the state. They will get a chance to redo the biennial budget in a couple in next year. See how that goes. That could go either way for us. I think obviously the governor election will be a big election for school funding for sure. So that's something to pay attention to. But yeah, every year that you don't see an increase in revenues, it just gets that much harder to balance the budget and to do all the things that we have to do and that we need to do.
Thank you for giving kind of a synopsis of that. And I think just as we drive the conversation, I think both perspectives are true, right? And so how do we bring that into balance to help move us forward as we're talking about what our strategic plan is, as well as what we need to do from a financial lens. And so I would love for the administration to help provide direction and clarity as to how we begin to structure those conversations a little bit more to move forward.
Yeah, I think just a good wrap up, thank you for that, is to think about two hard dates, regardless of all the other dates. June 30th is a hard date for the budget. We have to have some budget passed, and the last board meeting is actually on the 22nd, but this district does not function unless we pass the budget by June 30th. Like I can't run payroll, I can't pay vendors, I can't do anything as treasurer without that. So that is a hard date we can't avoid. We've done temporary appropriations in the past. They're horrible to work through. It causes, we end up fighting that the rest of the fiscal year, trying to get back to it. So that's one hard date. The other hard date is that first week in August, right? That August 3rd board meeting. If the district wants to be on the ballot in November, we have to have all of the pieces together, and that would be tough. Like if we were deciding on the amount, the type, all that thing in August, it would be very tough to pivot enough to tell a story between August and November. This is going to be different than what we've experienced. I think those of us who've seen these ballot initiatives, we've been doing renewals for a long time. And renewals are much easier because the folks who do the campaigns can put "this won't raise your taxes" on the signs, and that buys you a decent amount of votes right there. This will be a different beast, and so the longer runway there is, I think, that gives us more time to tell our story. It's a complex story. Thank you, Mr. Crosslett, for talking about Money Matters with Mike. That is one tiny way in which we try to tell our story, but it takes a long time to tell a story, to say one, this is why we need more local support. And I think we've told that story through the property tax reform, through the change of state. But also this is what we're investing in. This is what we're moving towards. Those are all complex messages that require a long time to resonate.
All right, so I will just add my two little thoughts really quickly so we can move on to our next presentations and hopefully get through those fairly quickly. Considering it's almost 8 o'clock now and we've only done 2 or 3 presentations here. So I ask folks to kind of keep us moving forward so we can get out of here quicker. But my 2 thoughts are really, one, we really do need to be paying attention also though to what happens with these other districts' levies. And honestly, in part because I do believe there's a narrative that comes out when a bunch of districts do not pass their levies. that is very hard also on those districts, even who have a lot of support. We had over 70% of our voters who voted for the renewal. What we do not want to see is every district around us falling, and then we go on the ballot and it makes it look more challenging in some ways to raise a larger amount. The second thing that I will say is I'm of the opinion either we go bold or we don't. So if we're gonna do a levy, to be quite honest, I would rather us go for a larger amount and try and go for as much as we can with a full story and do as big of a messaging around what the district needs, what the district's doing, why this levy is so important, and that whole picture. Or basically just go with the lowest amount we can survive off of and like barely talk about it. Because I think if you're doing anything in between, voters will not receive it well. And to be quite honest, anytime you go for an amount, you should have a story. So if you're gonna be pushing whatever amount, if you can do a large amount, but you have a full story, you can tell what this will do for a kid in the school. You can walk in and talk about what each school needs. You can talk about all the things that we've been doing to try and make it work up until this point. All the ways that community partners have been there at the table. That is such a better way to sell it. And to Board Member Lindy and Board Member Armbruster's point, that's a story that doesn't require, though, the strategic plan, but it requires the strategic plan to be looking at that. It requires you to say, this is what our goal is, and our strategic plan is to fix this so that a kid gets an A, gets into college, becomes back to the district, works, that storyline that really makes people value something. So I think there's a way to do that. I think we just as a board have to decide whether or not, the whole idea, are we gonna go bold with it and really push something that is a complex message that will require us to do a little bit more in the forefront with regard to even our strategic plan guidance and some other things? Or are we going to say, what do we need to survive until we can? And I think that is a much different conversation point. That is a much harder thing. And I think that's unfortunately where that list of districts that the treasurer put together, most of those districts are doing that because that's what they need to survive. They are not putting a levy on to do anything new, fancy, any of that. They are saying, look, if I don't get this, y'all may not have a building tomorrow. And that is the real truth on that. And so I think that's just the reality we're living with. Thank you, Treasurer Gustin. We're going to let you take a break for a little bit. And we turn it over to Superintendent Murphy to introduce our next of what should be 2 quick presentations.
Yes, sir, definitely 2 quick presentations. Our Director of Curriculum and Instruction is coming, Ms. Emily Campbell, to share with us about 2 things. One, we traditionally bring to the board any curriculum adoption requests, and that's one. This one is around health and PE, and the other one is a request about summer school. The health and physical education curriculum adoption, the request today is sharing information. We'll have to come back for you to say yay or nay at a later date. Emily?
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Murphy, Board, Treasurer Gustin. Hard to come after a budget presentation to talk about a curriculum adoption, but I'm going to start with, this is not an ask for more money for PE and health. It's a maintenance of what we've used before, approximately $180,000. We embarked on a curriculum adoption for PE and health with our science, PE and health manager and our council chair at the beginning of the year because our health curriculum for high school was no longer available for our teachers and didn't have high quality instructional materials in PE. So in the curriculum department, we define high quality instructional materials as those resources that are aligned to our standards. They have resources for students. They have instructional strategies, differentiation, evidence-based practices, and then the 4th is measurement, those formative assessments that teachers can use to drive instruction. So in PE, we piloted 2 pilots. Our teachers were selected by their peers and council, and they used Quaver Ed PE and school health with students. That met all their must-haves, and one of the must-haves that really rang true for the teachers are those materials that will help our students graduate ready for lifetime fitness and activities. They're aligned to the standards and the assessment requirements published by ODE, and teachers feel comfortable uplifting and using those materials to provide professional learning for their peers. In health, we are recommending for adoption, we're recommending for the continued use of our ETR Health Smart for K-6, and for adoption, the 2025 version of Goodhart-Wilcox, which is the same curriculum, just a different copyright date, and some edits that the teachers appreciated. Again, that meets all of the must-haves, and they're aligned to the very specific laws and requirements that are established for health.
All right, so any questions on this part with regard to the PE curriculum or the health curriculum? Board Member Bolton.
Yes, thank you so much, and this is for information. I mean, we're not voting tonight. This is because curriculum, like finances, is one of the places we're supposed to get in the weeds because we have a revised code responsibility. And I appreciate this. And I do think the board probably needs to have a little bit more information. You know, health curricula is always of great interest to many people. And so I do think the board has to have some more detailed information about health curriculum. And I know there was a period of time where we actually had to use the national health curriculum because the state of Ohio didn't produce a health curriculum for a number of years because of the controversy. But I think if we can have more information, and of course, any of the adoption part of this for books or the teaching materials being on display in the hallway, I'm very supportive of us having high-quality health and physical education curriculum. I would like, as a board member, and I think for the whole board, and knowing our revised code responsibilities, a lot more detail would be helpful for everybody before we adopt. But thanks for all the work that everybody's been doing to get us this far.
Thank you, Board Member Bolton. I should have shared that the next step is we'll put a table out here right outside the board office where we put together, so you can access the resources. And then we like to come back in a month after you've had time to dig into those details to get your board vote.
And it would be great to see that the detail that's even in the Ohio Revised Code is actually covered in the curriculum. Thanks so much.
Any other board members? No? Yep.
Did you say that the staff had already kind of looked at this too?
Yes, our teachers came together, they voted for peers to pilot, our peers piloted it, they used all the pilots so that they can compare lessons, they can talk to students about engagement and things like that.
Okay. And when it's on display, it's for the public to see as well, right?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, ma'am.
Come on down. Check it out. All right, well, seeing no other questions at this time, let's keep going.
Okay. So the other piece that I am speaking with you today about is our recommendation for summer school. We are recommending that we provide additional time and space for our third graders and our 9 through 12 students who need to make up credits to stay on track for graduation. We are recommending that we do this with our Title I spaces and Title I funds. That would look like an additional 18 days for both third graders and high school students. The third grade program is similar to last year. So we would target our rising grade 4 students who are not yet considered promotable according to the third grade reading guarantee. We are defining program success as students coming 16 out of the 18 days, and that there is an increase in their fall-to-fall readiness benchmarks, as well as our staff, students, and families agreeing and strongly agreeing that this is a good use of time and helping prepare students to have a more successful 26-27. In this slide is a link to the sites that we're recommending. That is a reduction in the number of sites. I believe we had 17 last year, and our recommendation is 13 this year. Like last year, students will have access to some social emotional learning curriculum so that they are engaged and ready for the deep cognitive work. We have plan to use the same materials next year, so we don't have to buy new curriculum. We have the curriculum and the workbooks and all of our instructional calendaring. Then in high school, we are recommending that we invite students who are in need, again, to make up those credits that would keep them on track to graduate. Again, providing a survey to make sure that we have students, staff, and families agreeing that this is a good use of time in preparing them for the upcoming year. This is an example of what that schedule can look like. These blocks for high school are for students to make up half credits. And so many students typically have enough, it's only 18 days, and so they tend to need at least 2 blocks to make up a full unit, and half units are typically the easier way to schedule. Although extended school year is not summer school, that does run simultaneously to our summer school programming, and so where we can have common bus routes, facilities usage, things like that, we do try to align our supports. And so just for the board's edification, we will have ESY offered at 4 elementaries and 1 high school, as well as off-site services based on what is required in their IEPs. And so we are coming to you a bit sooner than we did last year for permission to run summer school so that we can get out in front of our families and they have time to make those commitments for the June recommendation.
All righty, Board Member Armbruster.
I just have one comment and one quick question. The comment is just something I heard during a tour of high schools is just, and I'm not sure we can do anything about this given our limited resources, but that the students aren't able to gain enough credits during summer school to really make a big difference for them. Again, not sure we can do much with that, but I did want to pass along that feedback. And then the question was just, I heard you say you're using Title I dollars. Does that mean that students not enrolled in Title I schools are ineligible to attend?
We generally find ways to work out the other schools.
Okay.
So like I know like Walnut Hills always does a fairly robust summer program, and they find ways to fund it. So, but
Okay.
generally, especially for the 3rd grade, that'll be it's almost
Yeah, the
completely
third
title
graders was
funded.
more my
Yeah.
concern than Walnut, but yeah, thanks.
Dr. Moffitt.
So thank you for the presentation. I have a couple questions, and some of these I'm asking out of ignorance, so I really don't know. You said that you're defining success. Can you go back to that slide, Rob, where you mentioned what success looks like, and it was the recovery of high school credits that they only have 18 days for, and then successful passage in the fall. Are we testing them in the summer? I mean, do we have any type of measurement to see progression so that we don't have to wait until they're off another month and then they come back to school? Like, I just, I'm kind of confused with how we're measuring their level of success after a break and more time off. Can we measure their, in some capacity, I'm not suggesting what it would be, but in some capacity, we can see where they came in at, and then we're able to see just how those 18 days were beneficial. Again, I'm not trying to suggest standardization. I don't even know if that's just a measurement from the teacher. I don't want to get into that, but is it a way to measure that success, that time frame of success?
Yep. So in both the grade 3 and the credit recovery, there are formative assessments that are interwoven within the lessons for teachers to track and have conversations with students about their progress. For third grade, two of those 18 days become OST, summer proctoring. And so because of that, we got a lot of concern about we need every single minute to teach. And so what we have done with the third grade instructional calendar is aligned it to our top standards that students need to make sure that they are proficient in. And we provide the OST for them. And we did see an increase in proficiency. Half of the students hit a higher score than they did in the spring because of those days. So then it's a lagging indicator. We go back and we update our materials accordingly. In high school, it is a very symbiotic relationship between counselors and the teachers that those students are in those classes right now, where we identify the standards that the students have not yet mastered, so it's not everything that they're trying to recover in the summer, but it is very personalized to the student to make up that credit.
Okay, that sounds a little subjective. I'm kind of confused on that one because I'm looking at it from a return on investment. How do we measure success? Are they coming in with, simple example, 10 deficiencies out of 20, and then if they master 3, that's success, but that's based on the relationship with the teacher? Is that what you're saying?
So for high school, it's like, if these are your standards and these are the 10 that the student didn't master for this semester, that's what they then are assigned and retaught in the summer. And then we measure success. So like last year, we had 747 high school students that earned at least half a credit and 587 high school credits altogether. So typically a student is able to recover up to 2 credits. To board member Armbruster's point, there are some anomalies that we try to work through and catch them up. Seniors especially, if they have more than 2 courses they have to recover, we try to make some personalized plans for them.
Okay, so definitely would love to see the data on last year's summer school success. What does the cost of summer school, did you say that in the presentation? I may have missed it. What's the cost of this proposed?
We are proposing $2.1 million from title funds.
And that would serve approximately, because you listed the schools. Rob, can you go to that part, that slide? Of the schools, how many students?
So this is extended school year. So this is all based on the IEP. We have 13 sites that we would offer third grade summer school to. And right now we have, well, I didn't do the math this way, but we have 2,439 students who are accountable for the third grade, and 999 students are promotable at this point. So that's about, 40%? So approximately 60% of our third graders need to reach promotable still, ish.
And high schoolers?
In high school, we just, our counselors just worked with their teachers identifying students. Don't have that number off the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine. And then this is for direct instruction. And there used to be a time when we would offer like Apex, online instruction to reach more students. Is there the possibility of that as well? I'm really kind of concerned with 18 days, and some students may not be able to come because of work. Some students may have other obligations in the summer, but they may need to come. And we don't have the number yet for the total number that is impacted, or maybe you can give us the data from last year, the total number that needed it versus the total number that attended. I would assume if there's a large gap there and the number of students that needed it but didn't come is significant, then maybe we could offer something maybe more of a hybrid model. Do you happen to know what it would look like if we incorporated online learning with that as well?
We have explored the option to provide like a virtual for our high school students. Edgenuity is the curriculum that we use for credit recovery. That was adopted, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. We moved away from Apex. And I believe 3 summers ago, we offered both in-person and a virtual option. And we sent that out to the team as, is this possible? So if we find that students just can't come to June, can they be enrolled in virtual Edgenuity? We just don't know the answer yet.
So we sent it out this year, is that what, or that was years ago?
We attempted it 3 years ago where kids could come in person or they could be registered into a virtual Edgenuity option.
What was the result? I'm sorry. Maybe I'm confused. Did they come or they didn't?
We're exploring that as a possibility. I don't know. We're still trying to figure that out.
Okay. And we don't have a cost for that?
So
Like how much is it versus?
That, there would be no transportation cost, and it would be a teacher staffing cost only.
So we only have, what is the proposal? How many high schools? Is it just the one being proposed in what you're suggesting now?
So for high school, we are proposing credit recovery at each of the high schools.
At each of them, okay.
We did see an increase in attendance that way. Our high schools really wanted to help like market and communicate and bring students into their personal spaces.
Yeah. Okay. And then my last question, or maybe, is about having this could this possibly be, is this cost neutral? Is there a way that we could maybe use this as a revenue generation? So I'm wondering, and again, with no online option, maybe that's not possible, but I'm wondering, like, there are other schools, kids that might need credit recovery, and they could pay to come to us, or have our students, if that is the case, pay. I know sometimes, like, you would have to pay if you went to another school, or this is a while ago, maybe not now. Is that the possibility to have it be maybe where we charge for outsiders to come in or something like that? I don't know, I'm just wondering, is it possible to kind of explore revenue generation, or to make it even just cost neutral, that the staff is getting paid, but people are paying for that? So I don't know if we had ever explored that.
You may remember a few years ago, schools did charge, even if it were like skin in the game, $50 charge. Some schools, it wasn't universal for sure, but I think there was a time the board said they didn't want us to charge students anymore. Not that it couldn't be discussed. I know my experience, and it's been a while, is they don't necessarily come if they have to pay a fee, but that was a while ago.
Sure. And I know I'm from that generation too, I was a little older, but I remember paying for my son to go to, won't share which one, but I remember paying. And so I'm wondering, I know it's not been what we wanted to do, but now that we find ourselves in a different situation, as long as we could cover the staff charge so that nobody's doing it for free, would there be a possibility to offer it online and make it be cost neutral? So the staff is getting covered, it's online, and then open that up to other students that might need that across our city. That I just was wondering about. So that was just my, that was my last question, just maybe
Not
make it a
summer
revenue.
school, but we are having very preliminary conversations about how to get credit recovery online in all of the high schools moving forward. So I'm not there yet, and we'd have to have your approval, of course. But for right now, we had not done that. The teachers want them face-to-face because a lot of different philosophies around that. But we are having conversations around how can we do this a little more broadly. This year, we've added the credit recovery piece, an extension of virtual high school at West High to make it a little more convenient for students not to have to go downtown, et cetera, et cetera. So we feel like we're getting good results there. That also could be a model that we could maybe do in different parts of the city by corridor or where we think there's the most need.
Yeah.
And then just a reminder, because I think Dr. Moffitt, you were there, I think we had almost 70 kids, seniors, be able to graduate last year because of the credits they made up during the summer.
Yeah, I did the summer graduation, but I was
thought
just
so.
wondering about revenue generating. Like,
Yeah.
can we open it up? There are some kids at other places that would pay. So I was wondering, as long as our staff is covered and they're not doing it for free, would that be a possibility? Have we ever explored that? So thank you.
Board Member Bolton, and then Board Member Mapp.
Thank you. For the high school folks, are parents contacted with the information as to how many credits kids are short?
Yes.
Okay, that's very, very important. Thank you. Then also, at Walnut, is it still practice that they have to come in person in order to get credit for summer school? Or did we change that policy a few years ago?
I believe Walnut prefers that they come in person and they come to Walnut,
Yes.
if you recall.
And that Walnut, is it true then that Walnut kids can't necessarily get it virtually? I mean, I remember this as a dispute.
I'd have to double check that, Board Member Bolton, but.
If we could find that out, I just think it begins to be a burden for some families and the students. I understand the reasoning. Was this money, this Title I money, is this year's Title I money, or is it next year's Title I money?
It's this year's, it's actually the carryover from last year
Great.
that's pushed into this year now to spend.
I love it. And then I agree that it'd be great to be able to do both virtual and in person. I just think that makes sense. Everybody else is doing stuff virtually and getting credit for it. I'm proud that we want to be more classic and old school about it. But the other piece, if I could, on kids showing up at the various high schools, I do remember where we tried to not have it at every high school, and it was a complete flop. So I appreciate you doing that. They want to go to their buildings, and their grown-ups in the buildings want to see them. So thank you. Oh, and transportation is horrible. How are you fixing that? It's the most expensive thing we do. No, it's okay for the high school people, but I'm telling you, we spend a fortune in summer school transportation. So fix it, Mr. Burkhart.
Mr. Burkhart wish he'd step back outside in the hallway. Board Member Matt.
Yes, I just wanted to piggyback off of what Board Member Moffitt had asked about in terms of a revenue generator. And so I don't know if this is something that's still current, but there was a point in time for some of the private schools where they would only offer summer school for their ninth graders. And so they would have to go out to other districts to be able to recover that credit. So I don't know if that's something that's still current or present day, but that may be an opportunity for students to be able to come to our district to receive that, credit. And again, it could be a potential way to bring in revenue, because I do know that they give a one and done type of experience, and then, they have to seek other alternatives after that.
I'm sure Treasurer Guston is loving hearing revenue opportunities. It's certainly a conversation we would like to have. Any other questions, statements? Well, Ms. Campbell, you get to go sit down. And Superintendent, please present your final
Yes,
presentation.
absolutely. So today we have our Director of Marketing Communication, yes, Ms. Sheila Green, coming to talk and share with us a little bit about how people can connect with CPS. So last time we talked about enrollment, and this time we want to talk a little bit more broadly to the community at large, how they can be involved with Cincinnati Public Schools. Ms. Sheila Green.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Superintendent Murphy, Treasurer Guston. Good evening, board members. I'm delighted to come before you today to talk about this topic. I just have one slide, so I do anticipate it shall move very quickly. I would like to resurface the last time that I came before you. I presented a district engagement plan, and I think it would be worthwhile just to reshare that definition that we asked for approval from the board about. And that definition is at Cincinnati Public Schools, engagement is the intentional two-way exchange between the district and its students, families, staff, partners, and community. It goes beyond providing information to creating opportunities for voice, building trust, and fostering collaboration that strengthens our schools. So as the superintendent has requested, I'm going to go through about 6-ish ways that our community can engage with us. And the first is to piggyback off of that definition with our district-wide engagement survey. So on the slide, we have here a QR code as well as a bit.ly link. This link has been distributed with all staff at the district to utilize broadly. So whatever event they're having, the purpose is to make sure we have one central location that we can collect feedback from so that we are all asking the same questions, and we can then compare those results of the survey. We've also shared this QR code and link in a flyer to all of our schools and asked that it be posted in the front office so that if parents or anyone visiting our school buildings has feedback that they want to share with us, that is a method to do so. The next way of communication that I'll highlight is our website that we have here, cps-k12.org. Our website contains a wealth of information. Our office is actively working on cleaning up the information that is on our site that is no longer applicable, as well as making sure that the most up-to-date information is readily available for our audiences. I will highlight on our website that specific for student safety, as it remains a top priority for the district, anyone can go on if they're experiencing bullying or if they know of someone who has experienced bullying and hit the bully button. Also, right above the bully button is our parent concern button. So parents have the opportunity to complete that form and connect with the district about their concerns. The next way that I will highlight is our customer care center. I would say that they are the unsung heroes of our district. They're on the front lines, getting those calls, taking those visits. And so they specifically support registration, enrollment, as well as a variety of concerns from our parents, students, and community members. There are specific hours for walk-in visits, 8 a.m. through 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, and can also be reached by telephone, 8 a.m. through 3:30 p.m. Be sure to press number 4 for assistance with registering your child or for general questions. Please be sure, everyone, this goes for all of our communities, to follow us on social media at IamCPS. This is an opportunity to engage with the district in real time for real-time connection. We check our social media daily, and so oftentimes we can receive direct messages that are monitored and responded to, as well as being able to reshare what's going on at our school buildings. So please be sure to use the hashtag IamCPS or hashtag Here for Kids so that we can reshare your stories to our stories. I'd also like to highlight several newsletters that we have going out at the district. One is our superintendent's newsletter, the Sunday Scoop. This typically goes out the first Sunday of each month, as well as Treasurer Guston has a newsletter, Financial Facts, and then at our various schools, there are newsletters as well that the community can engage for district updates, school updates, important reminders, et cetera. And then there's the opportunity to connect with us in person. So the district has several events that we put on throughout the year, several events that we partner with community partners to engage our community with. There are events for our parents, so we encourage to get involved through your LSDMC, PTO, PTA meetings, as well as other parent engagement events that the district conducts. I would encourage those interested to reach out to our district parent champion, Ms. LaRonda Thomas. We have Sundays with Shauna. This is an opportunity for open dialogue with our superintendent. Our next one is upcoming this Sunday, March the 8th at Roberts Academy. So I would encourage those who are able to please attend and engage with our superintendent and other staff members. Also upcoming is our Cincy Experience. So this is an event for educators looking to join our district that will be happening this week as well on Friday with school tours and Saturday with the recruitment fair, and that will be at Woodward Career Technical High School. And then one of the last events that I'll highlight is our Back to School Fest. So please save the date, August 8th at Washington Park. And then again, many other engagement sessions such as parent-teacher night conferences and community events that we partner with, such as the Black Family Reunion, Cincinnati Pride Parade, and other neighborhood events. So again, there are very many ways to connect with the district, and we have them highlighted here. I'll take the opportunity for any questions or feedback.
Any board members? Board Member Lindy.
Hi there. I don't have any questions or concerns. I just want to say thank you for your efforts. And as a parent, I believe I received an email to take the survey.
Excellent.
So excited to do that. I haven't done it yet, but I promise that I will.
Yes.
Thank you.
That would be our climate survey you're referring to. Thank you.
Other Board Member Bolton.
Yeah, thank you very much. A question. At the end of particular sessions or what have you, is there a kind of a debrief about how to proceed or the number of folks that came or what was the issue? I think the more that obviously that kind of can float and will help us understand where the public is more and more. And the engagement's critical, but us knowing a little bit more, I think everybody here is out and about and gets that kind of input, but it'd be great to see a more kind of a formalized, even through the superintendent, to kind of give us an idea as to what's kind of snapping and what's talking.
Yes, ma'am. I think department-wide, that is something I know our department is active at doing as far as debrief and following up with various events. With our survey, we also, it is anonymous. However, if those completing the survey would like us to follow up with them directly, we do ask that they provide their contact information so that we may do so. And then across other departments, I can't necessarily speak to that, but I would say that it is best practice to debrief the session and then to also determine ways that we might improve.
And to the degree people are willing to sign in at meetings so that we kind of create this list of folks that are engaged, I think would be helpful. And finally, any chance you get to keep having our kids represent us, have them represent us, because they're doing an awfully good job. I think better than the grown-ups are. On Facebook, it is absolutely adorable and impressive at the same time. So show our kids off as much as you can. It's so meaningful. It has great impact.
Yes, ma'am. It's our pleasure to do so.
Board Member Mapp.
Well, Board Member Bolton, you stole my thunder. I echo what Board Member Bolton said about seeing our students at the forefront of the different initiatives and for them to pretty much, champion the work that we do at CPS and how they are enjoying, right, the culture and the environment of our district and also impacted. So thank you, brilliant idea to see them at the forefront and also showcasing their talents and their abilities. I'm blown away by the things that, that they are saying and sharing. I absolutely love the trivia that was recently done. My question is, just to transition a little bit, is I'm curious to know, as we're talking about engagement and how people are able to connect with the district, I am curious to know how we also extend outward, right? Like this is kind of bringing them into us, but how are we reaching out to make sure that we are connecting with our community, with our parents and partners on a different level, right? Because we know that that direct connection helps to facilitate that rapport and that relationship. So I'm curious to know how we are extending those efforts outward. And also, can you speak to maybe the work that is done maybe with the parent champion to make sure that we are actively engaging our parents and our families as it pertains to like the PTO or PTA organizations as well as LSDMC. Can you speak to if any work is done in that space in partnership with our parent champion or if there's an opportunity for more connection to occur?
Yes, ma'am. If I may answer your questions in reverse order. I will say that we are actively working with our parent district champion with events, but also developing a marketing plan so that we have a broad lens of the events that are being put on throughout the year, that we may be more proactive in marketing those things such as tool talks, things that parents might not know about, and helping to educate them on how to get more involved and how to access those resources. So there is a partnership there and plans are in development. And then I would say as far as our efforts for outreach and how we are meeting the community where they are, definitely through Focus, we send a lot of messages. That's one of our metrics in our department as far as how we are reaching the community through robocall, texts, emails, and then also that face-to-face in-person engagement. So I mentioned parent night, for example, but also looking for other opportunities that the schools are already doing where we can have a presence there in the flesh as someone from the district to receive that feedback in person. Yes, ma'am.
Other board members? All right. I will just say the two things on this. One is I love that we're doing this opportunity because I think it's just an opportunity for the superintendent to share things that are important and vital that we don't always necessarily have a perfect place for it on the agenda. So I think doing this segment has been a good way to do that. The second thing is I think we have done a lot of effort over the last few years to really streamline certain things about how we communicate out and how we get communication back, by centralizing some of that work, by making sure that you all, the team is working with our schools and how they market and communicate themselves out. I think the next level to that will be part of what is looked at as far as our strategic plan goes as well, of how do we talk to people in their spaces in a regular way, but making sure that whatever information they're getting for that is able to come to your team as well, so to make sure you all are being able to collaborate that information that we're getting from multiple sources. Because I do think there's some information that may come during outreach that may be absolutely vital to just pinpointing something that could be done in like 2 seconds or that could be done in a short period of time, that we don't always get that information because they're so used to getting, one of the things we talked about in that discussion was how many times do you get the email and then you say, I'll get to it later, or I'll think about that later, and never do the survey. And in some ways, that information is still there. And so it's just another way we can still solidify some of that information, or also maybe add in some of the things that they're asking, some of the things you all are still looking for information on as well, so we can utilize their resources as well, as we are very limited in the number of people we have supporting marketing communications. And then I'll actually to give a third one, and this is really just a tag on to both Board Member Mapp and Board Member Bolton's point. I think seeing the students' faces on billboards, seeing the students' faces on all of our marketing materials, seeing kids who look like the district, even more importantly, sends a message to folks. And I think that's the thing that I think is so passionate, is that when you see a little kid who looks like they could be your child, or you see a little kid who looks like how you might have looked growing up, it also tells parents their child is welcome. And so whether that's a student with a disability, whether that's a student who is an international student, whether that's a student who just looks like an everyday average kid, there's something special about seeing different images and different people in each one of our marketing that really captures how diverse the district is, but also how welcoming the district is. So I think it's a great opportunity to keep doing more, and I appreciate the time we spend to talk about how to connect to the district. Thanks.
Thank you.
All righty. So we are through our presentations. Thank you all. We are now at the time where we will talk about Board Policy 8330, student records. So I will ask General Counsel Hoying to come up, and then he gets to stay. And this time it's legit. Like that last time it was my fault. General Counsel sent you to stay up here. This time you actually have the next couple. So let's start with our Board Policy 8330.
Good evening. Actually, you can do the slide deck, Rob. That's the next presentation, I think. Here to talk on behalf of the Policy Committee, or to introduce, at the last Policy Committee meeting in February, we had a discussion about Board Policy 8330, student records. This was up on our regular 3-year cycle of reviewing policies, but the Policy Committee asked for it to be discussed by the board. I'll just say a few words about it. The student record policy is the policy by which the board protects all student records. This would include, of course, name, address, phone, and email address, but it also relates to discipline records, grades, attendance, IEPs, all the records that the district maintains on its students. The hallmark of this policy is that the board is committed to safeguarding the privacy and confidentiality of student records, and that only those individuals with an educational reason to know should have access to student records. I highlighted one sentence in the policy, which is that CPS will not collect unnecessary records on students. This has become a topic because, among other things, there's been discussion of immigration records and what records the district may have that relates to a student or family's immigration status. And of course, given that that's not relevant to our enrollment, we should be minimizing collecting unnecessary records or data on students. And finally, I'd add that this policy also includes the board's policy for directory information. The board has the choice of what categories of information it identifies as directory information, and we substantially expanded the categories about 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. It includes, under the current policy, the student's name, school, grade level, parent's name, address, telephone, email, participation in officially recognized activities, and awards received. When the board expanded these policies, I think that was generally well received by schools who are trying to pull together student information to publish directories, yearbooks, other things other ways of building community within the schools. I would say that it was well received by partners who have also benefited by having some access to this directory information. The downside is that it does sometimes, this information is requested by folks that are sometimes trying to market to our families, and I'd point out charter schools sometimes request this information. Note, the district has recently been gathering, the Public Records Act also applies to community schools, and so we've been requesting information from community schools on their students' address, names, et cetera, so that we can similarly market to those families. That's the directory information policy. I'm not sure if Board Member Lindy had anything to add, Chair.
No, I appreciate the presentation, Council Hoying, and this was, in fact, as he said, part of the regular 3-year review and happened to be quite timely. I feel like, Dr. Moffitt, did you have questions about the directory section when we were talking about this in committee?
I did, and general counsel was able to kind of clarify.
You got what you needed on that front?
I don't know if we should mention that publicly or not. I don't, it was around
So,
maintaining, go ahead.
yeah, the partners request that information, including when we have partners who have been promoting levies. They've used this information as well. And the only way we can really provide that information is if this directory information policy allows us to.
And that makes great sense. I think, trying to go back to this meeting, we were putting this on here to gather input from board members before we recommend something out, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, so this is us coming to the board to see if anybody has any requests, concerns, questions. We'll come back with a recommended set of revisions following our meeting on the 13th.
Great.
So did any board members have any requests, questions, concerns, thoughts, feedback to give to the policy committee? All right, I will give, it's helpful. No, that's cool. I'll give just one thing that I think and I think General Counsel Hoying was discussing this I want us to be careful about whatever laws that we pass, or whatever policies that we pass, matching our right to be able to then say to someone else, we don't do X. And that's my only concern with when we collect records. I've been here where we've had to do redactions on things, and the worst part of redactions is information that should not be there being somewhere. So I just think having a policy that or at least make sure the policy might delineate a little bit more of what should be in information that we collect, even in some ways, like, even if it's just a non-exhaustive list, that kind of thing in this day and age, because what I'm terribly afraid of is that person who's trying to do something really noble, collecting a piece of information that we don't always collect, or we rarely ever collect, if not that we should not be collecting, and that being something that's in our records that we would have to share out in some way or fashion in the future.
You're recalling your days as an intern in the Office of General Counsel when we would have to redact out. I will say, thankfully, our schools are doing much better on that. We've done a lot of training with schools as what should be in a record and what shouldn't. So we don't spend nearly as much time with smelly black markers redacting out.
It was a terrible time. We did everything by hand. It was terrible, folks.
That's right.
I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly too, General Hoying, the language unnecessary records is slightly different from the language that we started with at the beginning of that meeting. Appropriate to just say for a second about why?
Yeah, the proposal was only records, the current policy says only records mandated by the state or federal government. The recommendation was to change that language to only records mandated by law, or mandated to be collected by law, and are necessary and relevant to the function of the district shall be collected.
Yeah, and I wanted to pause on this for just a second, because there is federal law that says we need to educate any student who is here, regardless of their immigration status. You can imagine the General Assembly passing a law that asks schools or tries to require schools to collect information about students' immigration status that could, if families knew about that, lead to students not coming to school. And I was trying to raise the point, I really appreciate the work that counsel's office has done on this. Our board has a history, even within this last year, of suing when we think that the government is doing something that is unconstitutional. And I wanted to protect our ability to do that again, should the state decide to ask us to do something that is unconstitutional. And I think, hopefully that doesn't happen, but if I appreciate it's a good example of why everybody should come hang out in the policy committee. But we get to have really interesting discussions. And I think the way that this is written leaves us space to do that in a way that I think is in line with our values. I want to say thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? We're all good? All right. So then I think the next steps for this is that it will go back to policy for further discussion and be brought back at a later date for approval.
Will do.
Next.
The next slide also relates to board policies. There was a question from the board, pertinent question about how conflict of interests, how the district's conflict of interest policies apply to our local school decision-making committees. Wanted to point out that the conflict of interest rules apply to LSDMC members. In fact, conflict of interest is specifically pointed at or referenced at 2 points of Board Policy 9142. First and foremost, the board's Policy 1130, which relates specifically to conflicts of interest, applies to LSDMC members. And the hallmark of that policy is that decision-making by LSDMCs should always be in the best interest of the district or the school. Should not be based on personal interests, financial interests, familial interests, et cetera. So that's point one. The second time it's referenced relates to the lead agency representative, who generally is the executive director of a lead agency that is in a sort of partnership relationship with the school. And what the policy says is that they should serve as a member of the LSDMC, but should recuse themselves when there's a conflict because of that contractual relationship. Last thing to point out, first of all, I think this is something we can provide some additional training to our LSDMCs on about what a conflict of interest is. And second of all, if there's a concern, it should be brought to our community partnerships office, who would work with our office to make sure there was follow-up as needed with the LSDMC. Glad to answer any questions on that.
Alrighty. Any board members with questions around this policy or anything connected to?
So, while everybody's looking at me, I actually did request that we talk about this particular policy because I think we've had some concerns around adherence to it and understanding it for the past few years. There's one particular instance where, and I'm trying to find this in the policy, so forgive me for just a second, because it talks about community members being on the LSDMC and their leadership responsibility. And there's just needed to be a little bit more interpretation around that. And so I thought that would be more appropriate if the LSDMC, the board members actually looked at that. So I can't find it at the moment, and I'll continue to look, but my understanding was that it said the community member should at first be the community council organization.
There are,
there are three.
Yep.
But the first one, or, there should be one that is a community council member from the community. In College, this particular school was in College Hill, and they have a very robust community council, so they had not been invited to be a member of the LSDMC. That's not to say that it was negligent on our part or theirs, but that, according to policy, should have been an invitation at minimum. And then from there, the community council, the community position could be decided amongst the entire LSDMC. Am I reading that right?
That's right. There should be one rep from the community council and then two others that are selected by the LSDMC.
Okay, I wanted to ensure that I was understanding that correctly when I referenced that to admin, because that wasn't followed in that particular instance. And so there was, some back and forth, and I just thought we needed to understand and get clarity as a board around the particular policy that we have in place before we, expected administration to clarify it. So that, now that you've clarified that is the case, I think that may need to be explained a little bit more, because I think I didn't even know until I pulled that up that the community council, the expectation is that the community council be on the LSDMC. I don't know if there's clarity around that.
That there be a representative from the community council, that's right.
Right. And so that was one point of clarification. And then conflict of interest, I just am a little, I didn't know, did we have that in policy that it goes back to the partner, to the partnership department, or is that something new that they're just instituting because we have a current conflict of interest?
So I'm not aware of any existing one, and I'm not speaking of any specific LSTMC.
Sure.
I think if you read the policy, though, the board has created these sort of autonomous bodies. That it is not within the administration's role. We would not have a role to say, you can be on, you can't. Where there's an issue that's been addressed to us, such as the community council not being represented, such as there's not enough parents on, that's something we've brought back to the LSTMC to say, this is what the policy says, and the LSTMC should work to remedy that. Does that make sense? So it's not just that we would put new people on necessarily, or tell someone they have a conflict of interest and so they can't. It's something that we would bring to the LSTMC to discuss with them.
So let me rephrase my question. When it has been discovered or questioned that there is a potential conflict of interest, what has been the procedure? Is it new that that conflict of interest concern goes back to the director of partnerships, as you shared in the event of a conflict of interest should be reported to the community partnerships office?
That's my
new?
language.
Okay, so what has been the procedure when there is expression of a conflict of interest?
I think when there's been an issue with anything related to the membership of the LSTMC, it's been reported to us, and we've brought that to the LSTMC to address.
Okay, so it's not currently in the policy that it go back to the community partnerships
That
office?
is,
You just added that?
Again, that's my language, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have Board Member Armbruster, Board Member Mapp, and then Board Member Bolton.
I just want to pull a chair member of the policy committee move and say the LSTMC policy is actually on the agenda for March. It got pushed from February because we ran out of time, so we are considering some changes to it. So again, welcome everyone on March 13th here at the board office, where we can discuss this in more depth and potentially improve anything that needs improvement.
They're usually snacks.
I see Board Member Lindy's trying to get more attendance. Board Member Mapp.
Thank you for calling out this policy. I do think just as a means of moving forward, I think there can be a benefit to having more education and more information about how we support the LSDMCs to ensure that there is that adherence, right, to what our policies say, not only for the LSDMC policy, but also for the conflict of interest piece.
Sure.
So I definitely think foundationally that will be a great way for us to begin to create that level of awareness, so everyone is on one accord, right, and understand what the expectations are and how to really how to show up, right, in those spaces. As it pertains to the conflict of interest piece, we recognize that conflict of interest doesn't always mean that there is a conflict, but we want to make sure that we minimize the possibility or the potentiality for there to be a conflict, right? And so when there is, as we talked about, there is a current conflict that has been presented, we do have to find a way to address that, because again, we can't have a conflict of interest policy and then have knowing conflicts, if that makes sense. And so I think that your office or the administration is tasked with how to address that area of conflict, especially as it pertains to a partner. We obviously want to continue to support our partners, right? But that can impact the decision-making, whether it is intentional or unintentional. So I do think that that is something that needs to be explored.
Board Member Bolton.
Just a real quick walk back in history on this community council piece. This is almost probably three revisions back of the LSDMC policy, and let alone the giant book that has everything in it. It was suggested, and I won't go into the names of the folks that had the dialogue, but one of the folks was very, very adamant about the community council being represented. And so, and that makes total sense. But the problem was that the people said, well, not every neighborhood necessarily has an active community council. So that's why you have to have the additional folks be mentioned. But then the other piece was a number of our schools aren't neighborhood schools. They are district-wide. They are on the east side or west side, or it's a particular interest or a particular value. So that, I think that the attempt of having two besides the community council, it was like, well, it doesn't have to be the community council, it'd be great. But I do know that the College Hill Forum has been asked on a number of occasions to be a part and have not.
Alrighty. Well, seeing no other folks wanting to make comment, I just want to highlight a couple things because I know board member Armbruster has already let us know that it's going to be on policy's agenda. So I think the two things is, one is just, I think it is helpful for us to understand at times what the LSDMC is and the purpose, because I do think that is somewhat of an evolving thing at times with how schools operate as well. The second thing I will say is I do think we had this conversation, I want to say it's now 4 years ago. We joined a board of like, who has an LSDMC, and then actually who has people who show up on a regular basis for the LSDMC events and activities. And I think that is helpful to give the LSDMCs the guidance that, if someone's not actively participating, actively engaging, or if you're not actually having meetings, that we need to address that, because that was the point of us giving time and space for them to have these LSDMCs and to have the authority that they have in some ways to give guidance. So I think that's another part to that conversation and policy that would be great to see. And then the third thing is really, as we are evolving how our schools look and how our schools operate, I think there is a conversation that can at some point happen, maybe not in the next few months or whatever, but and whether or not the reflection of what's on the makeup and how they operate needs to be addressed in kind of different levels. Because I can imagine seeing a K-3 or K-6 school having different needs and ways that their LSDMC might be effective in working versus a high school LSDMC's effectiveness in working. And I think we're still figuring out some of that process of how to make them connect a little more and do that. And I want to give Assistant Superintendent Badger a lot of credit for some of the trainings that they're doing to really get them understanding that role. But I do think a high school, for instance, may have a very different interest in how they need an LSDMC to participate and give advice, and how those LSDMCs might conflict with other, the ILTs and other things within the school, as opposed to some of the K-6, which is a lot more, at least my experience has seen, have been a lot more of the bigger picture concept than necessarily like the day-to-day operation of the school itself. So I appreciate bringing this bringing this information forward, and I appreciate the conversation that will be had with snacks in our next policy meeting. All righty, thank you. All righty, let me go back to my script. I don't screw it up if I don't. So we are now at the point in our agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we have another topic from Board Member Armbruster from Board Matters.
Yeah. So this is a great day to have this conversation because we just talked a lot about budgets. And so this is not the last time I'll be asking questions like this. And it's really to try and dig in a little bit more on what the return on investment is for the things that we're doing, to try and get at what are those high priority needs, what are those medium and low priority needs as we're looking at budgets. And so what I'm asking for is a detailed report on, since we started utilizing the iReady curriculum with MyPath and with the, it's too late, you guys, the testing, how has that impacted our overall testing scores for OST? And so I want to see that every dollar we spend on students is producing higher outcomes. And so I'm coming to this without an agenda. I just want to know what the details are. I'm going to be doing it with other items as well. I'm just starting with iReady because it's been a hot topic lately, so I figured why not just dig in on it. So I would just love to have, from when we first started with iReady to where we are today, what are the outcome improvements we've seen since we've started that investment over time, and what exactly that investment has been.
And I am going to take that as an assignment. But I think what may be clarifying on that for what you're requesting, we used iReady before. We've used it more diagnostically lately. So I'm assuming you're referring to when we move towards that diagnostic use of iReady as opposed to just the general iReady use.
So yes, diagnostic plus the MyPath, because that is taking time from instruction. So I'd like to know what that looks like as well.
I know that we have data from the past on the fidelity that people have done and used already, and then the impact that we have seen on the Ohio State test.
Great.
Yes, so I can gather
That's the
that.
type of information I'm looking for, and specifically to our students,
Absolutely.
not iReady's examples from other
No,
districts.
We've had this for CPS students.
Perfect. That is, it's an inquiry, it's an assignment, it's whatever one of these things you would like to give it.
Well, that will be an assignment. So for the official records there, seeing no objection to that assignment. Are there any other assignments? Board Member Bolton.
I don't know if this will please the board, but again, I was trying to do something and AI popped up as I was trying to research. Where are we? I know we have some sort of AI committee or what have you, looking at AI's impact on what we're doing. Whether it's staffing or whether it's budget or whether it's us being smarter or not as smart, whatever it is. I think it would be great to have some sort of, I'll make an assignment for the administration to report back on what their work on AI has been.
Yeah, so I see
If it pleases the board.
I don't see any objections. So I think it's just an update on the work being done with AI. I will also note that we were one of the first districts in this area to even have an AI policy, to which several folks are just now getting their policies together. And so we are on the cutting edge at all times here.
So smart.
Any other assignments? Yes, Dr. Buffett.
Is it me? Okay, I want to ask about, we had kind of talked maybe a month or so ago, I'm not exactly sure, around the status of the Montessori training that we're doing at Bramble and getting some sort of information around the teachers that we're retaining with that training versus I'm tired, so I'm saying this probably wrong, but we are currently paying for teachers to be Montessori trained. And we did not, I think we requested the data around the retention of those trainings for a return on investment. The discussion was, or the suggestion was that is for the upcoming opening June 2026, that is a discussion to have alignment between the union and the new teachers that are going to be trained. And so I'd like an update around the status of that requirement and the data that was requested on the retention of those teachers that we're paying for Montessori training for. Also, I would like to have an update on, because I was asked about our renaming of schools. Do we happen to have a status update on, I know the board does that. Does that need to go to policy? Are we going to kind of incorporate that in our strategic plan? What is the plan for the naming of schools?
I can actually give you a brief update, but we will do it as an assignment as well.
Okay.
In that I know Assistant Superintendent Badgett has actually been collecting information and surveys, and so we are very close to having all that information collected as to ideas and thoughts and feelings that folks have around the naming. And so we will certainly take and renew the assignment to bring back an update to the board on that process fairly soon.
Okay, well, I'm a little confused. What is the administration collecting data on? Because the board hasn't directed that. Or do we not need to? Like,
We do have an update in that board assignment log. And we were directed to do the work months ago.
so what was the side of it? Educate me, I don't know. Was
Yes.
it just to ask, to survey people about it, to survey the parents, the community?
All of the above,
So
yes.
we've done that?
We're
That has been
working
done?
through it. We're just about wrapping up.
Ethel Taylor was the last. It was postponed because of the snow. So Ethel Taylor's engagement session was last Thursday. So compiling the data, should have that done by the end of this week.
Okay, so are we asking the community broadly, not just those people that attend the school?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we've already cast the wide net to the community on what some of the names of these buildings should be?
So we got their feedback.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Looking
ma'am.
forward to that one. And then my last question is around building rentals and the alignment with the community learning center policy. The community rentals, the building rental usage, and I had requested the FMX data and around, I don't know if it needs to go to policy, but there's just been a lot of disparity between community organizations using the buildings, some having to pay, some are nonprofits, they are still having to pay, some are being, it's cost prohibitive. So the presentation was that the data has only been in FMX since January, which is, we need more data. So I know I wanted an FMX report, but I think we also need to look at that data longitudinally as well.
All right. Any other assignments? The only assignment I will give is that we will come back at the next meeting, hopefully, if not then through email, with an update on the particulars with regards to the strategic plan design and schedule. So we will try to bring those back to us for our next discussion. Thanks for reminding. Update, just for all those who are watching and will watch later, our next board meeting is at Covedale on the 16th. So please come on out, cheer on Covedale, and look for information on the location. It'll be the normal time, 5:30. And so that is the only other update I have. A proposed consent agenda has been distributed. Before we get to anyone who has exceptions, we are going to make one modification to the proposed consent agenda to, although it is actually correct in the growth minutes, we instead have the budget, finance, and growth work plan that we'll be approving. The minutes will be in the next meeting. So that's the only modification to the consent agenda as far as it is written. Again, those documents are actually still on board docs. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda?
We all look,
Board
as we
Member
all
Matt.
look at you. Absolutely. I only have one. For the treasurer's report, and that is page number 9, line item 1. See? Just one.
All right. Do I have a motion to accept the amended consent agenda with exceptions?
Second.
Treasurer Augustine.
No discussion? Stop, I'm being bad. Ms. Armbruster?
Yes.
Ms. Bolton? Yes. Mr. Crossett?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yep.
Ms. Mapp?
Yes.
Vice President Moffett?
Yes.
President Craig?
Yes. The chair will now entertain a motion for adjournment.
So, second?
Third.
Hearing no